Good afternoon and welcome to this National Assembly live proceedings. Today being Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. This broadcast is courtesy of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in collaboration with Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. My name is Gladys Mungai. Let's start by having a look at the highlights of the order of business this afternoon. The Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning will be moving a special motion on the consideration of a nominee for the appointment as the Auditor General. That taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning in its report on the vetting of the nominee of appointment as the Auditor General, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday 15th, 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 229, subsection 1 of the Constitution, Section 11, subsection 8 of the Public Audit Act of 2015, and Section 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, this House approves the appointment of Ms. Nancy Janet Kabui Gathungu as the Auditor General. Order number 7, questions. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Orders 42A, subsection 5, the following members will ask for questions for reply before the specified departmental committees. The nominated member, Honorable Gideon Keter, to ask Cabinet Secretary for Education. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree graduates from Masinde Mulilo University of Science and Technology and private universities have not been able to secure internship placements in accredited government hospitals since 2017? And could the ministry consider accrediting one more local and private hospitals to offer internship programs to Bachelor of Science Nursing degree graduates with the objective of increasing chances of securing employment? Those questions will be answered before the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Member for Mwatate, Honorable Andrew Mwadime, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Natural Resources. Could the ministry consider restructuring an electric fence in Mugeno Kisashau area in Mwatate constituency to end the ongoing human-wildlife conflict between the residents and wildlife from Sava West National Park? That particular question will be put before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. The member for Tharaka-Nithi, Honorable Gitonga Murugara, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain whether the multi-agency task force tasked by the Principal Secretary, National Treasury and Planning, with the mandate of studying, deliberating on, and making recommendations on matters of payment of pensions, gratuities, and other benefits to former councillors, completed its tasks as per the terms of reference? Has the task force submitted its reports on the matter, and if so, what are the recommendations, and when the former councillors are likely to be paid their benefits, pensions, gratuities, and other benefits? Those questions will be put before the Finance and National Planning Committees. Member for West Mugirango, Honorable Vincent Kimosi, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status report regarding the investigations into the disappearance of Evans Kabungu Mokoya, a case that was reported at Ngong Police Station through Occurrence Book 47/17 of 2019. On your screens is the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Justin Muturi, just making his way into the chamber. I'll hand you over for the live broadcast. Enjoy your viewing. Good afternoon.
Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the office of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor as your servants whom have been pleased to court the performance of important trusts in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests were committed to our church. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honourable members, as you may be aware, the statute law, brackets miscellaneous amendment, close the brackets bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2020, was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 89 of June 6, 2020, to effect various amendments to various statutes. The bill, which is sponsored by the leader of the majority party and is proposing amendments to 38 statutes, was read a first time on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. It was thereupon referred to various departmental committees for consideration in accordance with their respective mandates as per my communication of Thursday, June 25th, 2020. Honourable members, I wish to inform the House that I have since received a letter from the leader of the majority party dated July 14th, 2020, requesting my consent for withdrawal of some proposed amendments to the following 8 statutes as contained in the bill. Number 1, the Criminal Procedure Code, Cap 75, the Evidence Act, Cap 80, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003, the Public Officer Ethics Act of 2003, the Process of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2009, the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Act 2012, the Leadership and Integrity Act 2012, and the Bribery Act of 2016. Honourable members, in his request, the leader of the majority party indicates there is need to isolate the statutes he has listed above to allow further interagency consultations while allowing the rest of the bill to proceed without delay. I have acceded to this request, which implies that the bill will now undergo public participation, second reading, and other stages without making reference to the withdrawn statutes. In this regard, the bill will proceed as though the withdrawn statutes were not part of the bill as published. The House is accordingly guided. Honourable members, this second communication is on leadership vacancies occurring in reconstituted committees. Honourable members, as you are aware, during the morning special sitting of today, July 15, 2020, the House approved appointment of members to various committees. As indicated by the chairperson of the Committee on Selection, the reorganization of various committees occasioned several vacancies in the positions of chairpersons and vice chairpersons of a number of committees. The committees are as follows. 1, the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security, vacancy, vice chairperson. 2, the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 3, Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation, vacancy, vice chairperson. 4, the Departmental Committee on Education and Research, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 5, the Departmental Committee on Energy, vacancy, vice chairperson. Number 6, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, vacancy, chairperson. Number 7, Departmental Committee on Health, vacancy, vice chairperson. 8, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 9, Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 10, Departmental Committee on Lands, vacancy, Vice Chairperson. 11, Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture, and Tourism, vacancy, Chairperson. 12, Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry, and Cooperatives, vacancies, Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. 13, Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works, and Housing, vacancy, Vice Chairperson. 14, Budget and Appropriations Committee, vacancy, Chairperson. 15, Committee on Delegated Legislation, vacancies, Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. Number 16, Committee on Regional Integration, vacancy, Chairperson. 17, Select Committee on National Government Constituencies Development Fund, vacancy, Chairperson. 18, Select Committee on Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, vacancy, Vice Chairperson. 19, Committee on National Cohesion and Equality of Equal Opportunity, vacancy, Vice Chairperson. 20, Committee on Parliamentary Broadcasting and Library, vacancies, Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. 21, Committee on Member Services and Facilities, vacancy, Vice Chairperson. And finally, number 22, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Committee, vacancy, Vice Chairperson. Honourable members, as you may all recall, that the House on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020, extended the timeline for committees to elect their chairpersons and vice chairpersons by an additional 30 days from Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. The 30 days will expire on July 25th. Given the need to adhere to the said resolution of the House and the health and safety measures on fumigation and decontamination of the precincts of Parliament, which will commence on Saturday, 18th July 2020, I hereby direct all the affected committees to conclude the necessary elections by end of the day on Friday, July 17th, 2020. Having said that, honourable members, I wish to bring to the attention of the President of the House to the provision standing under 179, subsection 3, which provides, and I quote, a candidate for election as chairperson or vice chairperson of a committee shall submit his or her nomination paper in writing to the clerk by 5 p.m. on the day before the election. Close the quotes. To facilitate the elections to be held tomorrow, Thursday, July 16, 2020, and others to be held on Friday, July 17, 2020, the clerk has made necessary arrangements and has circulated a schedule showing the date and respective times appointed for election of chairpersons or vice chairpersons of the 22 committees. And in this regard, 1, nomination forms are to be collected from the Office of the Director of Committee Services on the 4th floor, room 401, Continental House, Parliament Buildings. Number 2, for elections that are scheduled to be held tomorrow, Thursday, July 16, 2020, candidates should make arrangements to pick the forms and return them today by 5 p.m. in the same office. On the other hand, in respect of the elections to be held on Friday, July 17, 2020, the nomination forms should be returned to the same office by 5 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday, July 16, 2020. Honourable members, I wish to guide that the reconstitution of the committees does not affect the usual tenure of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Select Committee on National Government Constituencies Development Fund as provided for under standing orders. Standing under 207, subsection 4, and section 50, subsection 3 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act of 2015. The said provisions stipulate that once constituted at the beginning of a parliamentary term, the two committees are to serve for a period of 3 calendar years and are then reconstituted for the remainder of the parliamentary term. For the avoidance of doubt, the initial 3 years will lapse at the end of the current fourth session, and the House is accordingly guided. There's some members who appear to be lost as to where to sit. Maybe. Honourable members, this last communication relates to engagement between the Executive and the National Assembly during the COVID-19 pandemic period. Honourable members, I wish to make this communication as a matter of public interest and to guide the House on the continued engagement between the National Assembly and the Executive and other organs of the state during this period as the country deals with the COVID-19 pandemic. To begin with, honourable members, I wish to inform you that I have received a letter from the head of the Public Service regarding the engagement between the National Assembly and the Executive during the subsistence of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the correspondence, the Executive is cognizant of the complementary relations between the Legislature and the Executive in the carrying out of their respective constitutional mandates. Specifically, it is observed that as part of oversight, state officers from different state organs are expected to appear before Parliament for various reasons. In this regard, there is need to provide alternative operational guidelines to ensure that the officers discharge their duties in a manner that serves the public good without compromising on individual or public health. Honourable members, in order to ensure that Parliament continues to discharge its mandate, the Executive shall continue to avail its members to attend parliamentary queries and summons during this period. However, in keeping with public health protocols requiring minimal physical contact, the Executive has established technological infrastructure and platforms through which state officers can attend Parliament through virtual means. It is a matter of public knowledge, honourable members, that there has been a spike in the number of infected cases in the country in the last few weeks, and Parliament has also not been spared. It is therefore imperative that the necessary precautions be taken to control chances of infection among the parliamentary fraternity. Indeed, Parliament continues to take necessary steps aimed at contributing to the flattening of the curve of infection and protecting members of Parliament, staff, and essential visitors from infection. Undeniably, honourable members, committee activities bring together persons from all walks of life, notwithstanding the fact that Parliament has no testing capacity for the disease. In this regard, I have acceded to the request from the Executive. Henceforth, all committee sittings will be held virtually, unless otherwise stated, with my express authorization. These measures are further to my earlier directives to ensure that government guidelines and protocols are adhered to. Honourable members, arising from the above, I hereby further direct that all committee sittings are suspended until Tuesday, July 28, 2020. Thereafter, committees will only operate virtually as per my guidance above. Arrangements should therefore be made for full virtual proceedings of committees before resumption. However, physical meetings will be allowed for purposes of electing chairpersons and vice chairpersons as communicated earlier. In this regard, the election of the chairpersons and vice chairpersons of the various committees should be held latest by Friday, July 17, 2020, to pave way for the fumigation and decontamination of the precincts of Parliament as per the public health guidelines. In conclusion, members of Parliament and staff are encouraged to undergo voluntary testing and self-isolate in case they come into contact with a positive case or a suspected positive case in accordance with the Ministry of Health guidelines. In the meantime, the Clerk of the National Assembly is hereby directed to ensure adherence to this communication with respect to the administrative services herein. And the House is accordingly guided. Thank you, Honourable.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Yes, nominee 001, I approved your petition, but you appear to be loitering out there. Honorable Sankok, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And I'm reading a petition regarding the economic viability of Phase 2B of the Standard Gauge Railway project. I, the undersigned, on behalf of concerned Kenyans, especially residents of the South Rift and Nyanza, draw the attention of this House to the following. 1, that the design for infrastructure development, particularly road and railway transport, ought to be intended to open up the areas it traverses or terminates for economic exploitation and spur economic development. 2, that having completed Phase 2A of the Standard Gauge Railway from Nairobi to Suswa, the government embarked on design and construction of the westbound Phase 2B of the SGR project from Suswa Dry Port. 3, that residents of South Rift and Nyanza welcome the project with optimism that it will further open up the region for economic exploitation, spur economic development, and contribute to expansion of urban areas along the SGR line. 4, that unfortunately, the multi-billion 52 kilometers Phase 2B SGR line from the Suswa Dry Port stalled at Emurutoto Shopping Center, a small shopping center with only one shop and a butchery. Neither roads nor any essential social amenities are available there. 5, that residents are concerned that there seem to be no indication of construction of the Phase 2B of the SGR line that will extend to Western Kenya as envisaged earlier. 6, that Phase 2B Standard Gauge Railway project could be economically viable if the 12-kilometer stretch to Narok town is completed to give it an economic catchment area of the Great Lake regions. 7, that residents are further concerned that unless the remaining short stretch of 12 kilometers from Murtoto to Narok Town is completed, the project ran the risk of becoming one of the Kenyan's white elephant projects, in which billions of shillings sourced through loans and taxpayers' money with little economic returns benefit to South Rift and Great Western Region. 8, that the completion of the 12-kilometer stretch to Narok Town could transform, serve as special economic zone and a hub for residents of the region producing fish, wheat, maize, barley, tea, potatoes, livestock products, bananas, avocados, pineapples, soapstones, sugarcane, among other products. 9, that the matter raised in this petition are not pending in any court of law, constitutional, or other legal bodies. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works, and Housing, 1, inquire into the circumstances under which the SGR project Phase 2B project has terminated in a remote Emurutoto shopping center instead of Narok Town. 2, intervenes through the relevant government ministries to ensure that the 12-kilometer stretch from Emurutoto shopping center to Narok Town, which has sufficient human traffic and adequate economic viability, and that a link to the highly productive Great Lake region be constructed. 3, recommends to the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure and the National Treasury to identify financial resources to complete the 12-kilometer stretch of SGR to Narok Town, and to urgently ensure that the already constructed 52 kilometers stretch is safeguarded from vandalism perpetrated by scrap metal dealers, and that it does not fall into utter disuse. And finally, makes appropriate recommendation with respect to ensuring that the short and medium-term viability of Phase 2B of the standard gauge railway is realized. And your petitioners will ever pray. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Is directed at the Committee on Transport, is it?
Yes.
Do I see the chair of the committee? It will be transmitted to the committee through the House of the Legal Majority. And just for the information, general information of members, because I can see members, they don't know. There are some members who like sitting, I think, outside generally. There are very many empty seats. So I can see some who are coming and going into the lobby room, and I think they enjoy sitting there.
Honorable Speaker, we can't know.
You can take a seat. You don't have to. Sergeant at Arms, you can tell any member who is out there, because I'm about to make an important announcement, including those who are walking away, unless they don't want to hear this announcement. I hope I can be heard by those who are in the tents, or who are in some other, in the in the members' lobby. Honor members, very soon the clerk is going to circulate a schedule showing the times and places when each committee will hold, and day, which committee where to hold the elections, depending on the vacancies that have been declared. And because there are some committees which have to do their elections tomorrow, it is important that all members who may be interested, I don't know what you may be interested in. You could be in the tent, or maybe you may be campaigning in the tents, but you may not know the members of your committee. So you may be spending a lot of valuable time talking to members who don't belong to the committee in which you may be desirous of leading or taking up a leadership position. So at least it's going to be circulated, so that if you are interested in any of the positions that have been declared, then you know that you must take your forms and deliver them by 5 p.m. today, as directed earlier in my communication. So those who are coming in and dashing out, unless those are the passengers. So I think because I've seen some who are just standing out there and taking leave. So if you're interested in any position, please take the circular, which is going to be distributed shortly by the clerk, within the chamber and perhaps also in the lobby room and in the tents, in the dining, if there are any who are still there in the dining. Very well. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader of majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House. Today, Wednesday, July 15th, 2020, afternoon sitting. Number 1, a report on the Board of the National Government Constituencies Development Fund on project proposals approvals, disbursement status, and restrictions imposed on the constituency account for the 4th quarters of 2019-2020 for the financial year period of 1st of April 2020 to 30th of June 2020. Number 2, the annual report and financial statements of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority for the year ended 30th of June 2017. The annual report and financial statements of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority for the year ended 30th of June 2018. Number 4, the county government budget implementation review report for the financial year 2019-2020 from the Office of the Controller of Budget. And lastly, number 5, the report on implementation of the National Assembly's recommendations to the outcomes of the United Nations Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, known as COP24, from the National Treasury and Planning.
Well, the one from CDF will be referred to the committee on Select Committee on National Government Constituency Development Fund. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
First question by the nominated member, the Honorable Gideon Ketel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Education that could the CS Cabinet Secretary explain why Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree graduate from Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology and private universities have not been able to secure internship placement in accredited government hospitals since 2017. Also, could the ministry consider accrediting more local and private hospitals to offer internship programs to Bachelor of Science nursing degree graduates with the objective of increasing chances of securing employment? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Next question is by the member for Matate, Honorable Madime.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 88 of 2020 to the Cabinet Secretary on Environment and Natural Resources. could the ministry consider constructing an electric fence in Mgeno, Kasigao area in Mwatate constituency to end the ongoing human-wildlife conflict between the residents and wildlife from Savo National Park? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Next question by the member for the Raka. The member has written to me requesting that the question be stood down, which request I have acceded to. So question is stood down. Next question is by the member for West Mogirango, the Honorable Vincent Kemosi, who likewise has written to me requesting the question be stood down on account of his being absent. But you wrote. What do you mean you are far? How did you sign the letter when you are far?
But when I came back, I found out that there was no jam. So the letter was there for emergency purposes in case I was not to make it, Honorable Speaker.
Then when you do that next time,
Yes.
you must then come and also inform the speaker that
Yes. Yes, Honorable Speaker. I've just come some 2 minutes ago. That is why I didn't want to disturb you, but I'm guided, Honorable Speaker.
yeah, because I had already approved your request for the deferment of the question. But proceed, ask it.
I stand guided, Honorable Speaker, and thank you. Honorable Speaker, I wish to ask question number 102/2020, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and the Coordination of National Government. The question goes, Honorable Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status report regarding investigations into the disappearance of one Evans Kubwa Mukaya of ID number 28506914, aged 28 years, who went missing on 5th of November 2019, and the matter reported at Ngong Police Station through occurrence book number 44/17/2019. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, question referred to the Committee on Administration and National Security. Next question by the member for Igembe Central, the Honorable Kubai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request to ask question number 103/2020, referring it to the Cabinet Secretary, Tourism and Wildlife. Mr. Speaker, one, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a progress report on the status of the geological survey, drilling, and the construction of Kabukuro Boho in Igembe Central constituency, which was commissioned in 2014 by Kenya Wildlife Services as a community project? Two, how much money has been allocated and utilized since its inception? And lastly, Mr. Speaker, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that the SEND project is completed? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Committee on Environment, again, and Natural Resources. Last question by the member for Rabai, the Honorable Kamoti Momkale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 113 of 2020, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Education. One, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the ministry's policy regarding coercion of parents and guardians in secondary schools to pay money which is allegedly used to pay salaries for teachers employed by the respective boards of management? Two, what steps is the ministry taking to ensure that adequate teachers are employed in all registered secondary schools, particularly in Rabai constituency, in order to ease the burden of parents paying salaries for teachers employed by the respective boards of management? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Committee on Education and Research. Next up, your statement. Yes, the Honorable Edward Welle.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 44.2C, I wish to seek for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security regarding registration of persons in Garissa and Wajir County. Honorable Speaker, Garissa and Wajir County have over the years suffered disproportionate number of young men and women without national ID cards owing to their inadvertent registration as refugees in the Dab, Ifo, and Dagahle refugee camps in those two counties. Over 20,000 Kenyan Somalis in Garissa and Wajir are currently registered and found in the United Nations High Commission for Refugees database as refugees. Their registration as refugees was an act of desperation by their parents to escape the distress of the severe drought of the 1990s. The difficulty without obtaining national identity card means these Kenyans cannot access employment, they cannot join higher education system in our country, they cannot engage in lawful business, they cannot open bank accounts or even travel across the country. Honorable Speaker, the foregoing are fundamental rights which these Kenyans have been denied for years. Article 21 of the Constitution of Kenya provides that it is the fundamental duty of the state and every state organ to observe, respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights and fundamental freedoms in the Bill of Rights. Honorable Speaker, the leadership of Northeastern Region in 2017 appealed to His Excellency the President on this matter. Hence, the President directed the Director General of Registration of Persons through the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government to develop a framework and oversee registration of these Kenyans and the issuance of ID cards to them. In August 23, 2019, the government formed a task force to develop the procedure of vetting, verification, and eligibility criteria for these stateless Kenyans using their parents' citizenship documentation, the local elders, the chiefs, and other government agencies. The verification was conducted, but since then, nothing has come out of it. Honorable Speaker, the youth verified and who underwent this verification include and they come from the following constituencies: Garissa Township, which I represent, 3,000. Lagdera constituency, 1,300. Ijara constituency, 2,200. Fafi constituency, 2,300. Dadaab constituency, 6,200. And Wajir South constituency, 3,500. Honorable Speaker, it's against this background that I seek a statement from the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on National Security, Administration and National Security, on the following. When will these youth who underwent the verification process be provided with ID cards? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary provide timelines as to when he will implement the President's 2017 directive on registration of persons in the affected areas? And lastly, 3, what did the task force do after the verification process? What did the task force recommended after the verification process was completed? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chair, Departmental Committee on Administration is in the House. Request to be channeled through Office of Leader Majority. Very well. The other request for a statement is by nominate the member, Professor Jacqueline Odwol. The Honorable Professor Jacqueline Oduor. Is a member sitting in the tents or? Yeah, this is a member who is always very punctual. Is she the one walking? This one doesn't look like her. Can you check in the room out there whether the Honorable Professor Jacqueline Oduor is around? She doesn't look like this one. Campaigning for what? You want to speak on our behalf, Honorable Dr. Tekla Chebet?
She was around, but she said she already asked that question. That's what she said. I don't know.
It's not a question, it was a request for a statement. But if, well, in any event, she isn't present, then the request is dropped. You may be right, Honorable Tekla, because the Honorable Professor is always in the chamber. She suddenly appears, comes here. She arrives here earlier than the member for Suba's North. Yes, I know she normally appears before you. Next order then.
Order number 8, special motion, consideration of a nominee for appointment as the Auditor General.
The chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning. Vice Chair, the Honorable Wayenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning in its report on the vetting of the nominee for the appointment as the Auditor General laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, July 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 229 into bracket 1 of the Constitution, Section 11/8 of the Public Audit Act 2015, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Ms. Nancy Janet Kafoi Gadongo as the Auditor General of the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, in our vetting process, we were guided by the provisions of the Public Audit Act number 34 of 2015, the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, Act number 33 of 2011, Chapter 6 of the Constitution on Leadership and Integrity, Article 250 of the Constitution on composition, appointment, and terms of office of constitutional commissions and dependent offices, Article 229 of the Constitution on the appointment of the Auditor General, Article 232 of the Constitution on values and principles of public service, Article 10 of the Constitution on the national values and principles of governance, Article 77 on restriction on activities of state officers, the Leadership and Integrity Act, Cap 182, the Public Service Values and Principles Act, number 1A of 2015, and the Public Officer Ethics Act, Cap number 183. Mr. Speaker, as members of this House all know that the office of the Auditor General is a creation of the Constitution 2010, and it is a very important office, Mr. Speaker, enshrined in Article 229 of the Constitution, which I quote, that there shall be an Auditor General who shall be nominated by the President and with the approval of the National Assembly appointed by the President. Mr. Speaker, the essence of this provision in the Constitution is to enable Parliament to play its role of oversight by having an opportunity to veto the appointment and the nomination of the holder of that office. Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly's Committee on Finance and National Planning is required by law to vet and to interview the nominee, which according to the rules and statutes I have cited, Mr. Speaker, we have done. This, Mr. Speaker, enables the nominee who has been appointed to enjoy the trust and confidence of both the executive and the House of Parliament. It is important because, Mr. Speaker, the work of the Auditor General is very essential. Mr. Speaker, among the requirements for you to be nominated to the work of Auditor General is that you have to have extensive knowledge of public finance and at least 10 years in auditing or public finance management. The Auditor General, subject to Article 251, serves for a term of 8 years, just like the Controller of Budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are duties and assignments meant for the Office of the Auditor General that are key in the management of public resources of this country. Mr. Speaker, within 6 months, at the end of every financial year, the Auditor General is required by law to audit and report in respect of every financial year to Parliament on the accounts of national and county governments. He is also required by law to account and audit funds of all institutions that are under national and county government. He is also the Auditor General of all the courts. He also audits all commissions and independent offices established by our Constitution. He is also required to audit and report on the accounts of the National Assembly, the Senate, and all the 47 county governments of our republic. He is also expected as part of his work to audit and report on all political parties funded from public funds. He is also supposed to audit the national public debt. He or she, at the accounts of any entity, Mr. Speaker, which is required by the legislation of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that the office of the Auditor General is very important, and as members of this House, through the Committee of Finance, we have been able to carry out the vetting process, and we have come out with a report which has been tabled in this House, and I think by this time has been put online for members to go through. Mr. Speaker, in compliance to Section 6(9) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, the Clerk of the National Assembly placed the required advertisements, inviting the public to submit memoranda by way of written statements or other oath in regard to the suitability of the nominee in conformity with Section 6/9 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act. And by the close of submission deadline, the committee had received several memoranda from civil society groups, including the Constitution and Reform Educational Consortium, CRECO, the National Taxpayers Association, Transparency International, African Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance, and other NGOs. Most of them were challenging the process of appointment of the Auditor General and the role of the Public Service Commission vis-a-vis the independence of the office of the Auditor General. The committee was of the view that those memoranda were challenging the nominee, were not challenging the nominee directly, but were offering advisory opinion on the need for the committee to scrutinize the integrity of the process of appointment and the need for Parliament to amend the law to provide for a smooth transition whenever the office of the Auditor General falls vacant. Mr. Speaker, the stakeholders proposed a specific amendment to Section 12 of the Public Audit Act to provide specific timelines within which a substantive Auditor General must be appointed. Mr. Speaker, this arises from the fact that our last Auditor General, Edward Ouko, left office around August last year. To date, it is almost a year, Mr. Speaker, and that office has been without a substantive holder. And the effect, Mr. Speaker, is that Parliament and the county assemblies and other consumers of the report of the Auditor General are left waiting for a long time to make important decisions on the protection of public funds. Mr. Speaker, the committee also received a memorandum from a civil society organization called Kenyans for Justice, but which was filed after the deadline. Hence, the committee did not consider it in light of this, as we had already completed the vetting exercise. Mr. Speaker, it is critical to note that the importance of this particular office, pursuant to the Constitution and the Public Audit Act, is that key among the function of this office is to ensure that all public money has been used and applied for purposes intended, and that the expenditure conforms to the authority as put by law. It is therefore critical to have this office occupied so that the application and appropriation of public resources is properly monitored. Without this office, it is not possible to oversight bodies such as Parliament, and we are also unable to carry effective oversight without those reports. Mr. Speaker, in terms of approval hearings, the nominee appeared before the committee on Friday, 3rd July 2020, and the committee examined her suitability based on the criteria set out by the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011. The nominee was interviewed on her academic credentials, experience, knowledge of sector issues, leadership, and integrity. And based on her performance during the vetting exercise, the committee found that the nominee has a wealth of experience to serve as the Auditor General, having worked in the office of the Auditor General, previously known as KENAO, or the Kenya National Audit Office, for close to 18 years. and having listened through the ranks to her current position, which is the Director of Audit. She met all the minimum qualifications required by Article 229 of the Constitution and Section 11 of the Public Audit Act 2015. She also demonstrated her extensive knowledge in auditing as well as public finance, having worked in that office for most of her career. Her educational background was also in line with the requirements of the office. And in terms of the nominee's abilities, she demonstrated tenacity to hold this position in the way she responded to our questions as posed by the members of the committee. And in terms of specific qualifications, Mr. Speaker, in consideration of her public background, Mr. Speaker, I submit that she is a Kenyan citizen born in Kisumu County in 1969. She's currently pursuing a PhD program in Business Administration Strategic Management at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. She attained a master's degree in Business Administration Strategic Management at the University of Nairobi in year 2009 and graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce degree, accounting option, in the University of Nairobi in 1992. She also did her certified public accounts examination at the Kenya School of Professional Studies. She is a certified information systems auditor. She has an advanced diploma in information technology from the Kenya School of Professional Studies. She's computer literate, having obtained a certificate in computer studies from Nyamashaki Women's Center in Nyeri. She sat for her KACE at Kenya High School and her KCE at Moi Girls High School. Mr. Speaker, Ms. Kafoi Galungu is a member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, ISPAC, the Association of Women Accountants of Kenya, AWAC. She's also a member of the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. She has also participated in Kenya Leadership and Integrity Forum and has been a chair of that watchdog agency sector group. She has also been a member of the Implementation Committee on the report of the Task Force on Legal Policy on Institutional Framework for Fighting Corruption in Kenya, which represents the Office of the Auditor General. She has also been a member of the National Coordinating Committee on Leadership and Integrity and has also been a member of the Monitoring Implementation of the Devolution Conference Resolutions Committee. Her work experience, as indicated, is that she has worked in the Office of Auditor General previously, known as Kenao, and is currently a Director of Audit, a position she has held since February 2014. She has also held other positions in the office, including financial auditor from 1993 to 1997. She has been an assistant director of audit between 2006 to 2010. She has been deputy director of audit 2010 to 2014. And she has also worked at the Kenyatta National Hospital as a chief internal auditor in the years 2004 to 2006. She has also been a senior internal auditor with the Ministry of Education and has held the position of provincial schools auditor for Central Province between 1997 and 2000. So, Mr. Speaker, with those attributes, the committee was convinced that Ms. Kavoi Galungu is qualified to hold this office, which is charged with the responsibility of protecting the utilization of public resources of the Republic of Kenya. And I call upon my colleagues to support the Finance Committee in its findings and in its report. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request the Honorable Bonnie David Mwarika to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Is it Honorable Bonnie?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I arise to second the motion for the appointment of Nasi Janet Kathungu as the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, the Office of Auditor General requires somebody with wide experience in audit and, of course, the necessary education background, because it's very important office. As my colleague has already stated, Nazi is well educated. She has a BCom in accounting option, MBA in strategic management, and she's currently pursuing PhD in strategic management. That gives her a good education background to audit this office. In terms of professional studies, she's a CPAK, and she's a member of ASPAC, which is a requirement to audit this office. In terms of work experience, Nasi started working in auditor office, and she has worked there for 18 years. Apart from the 2 years she worked in Kenyatta Hospital. That gives her a very solid experience in terms of audit. In fact, during the vetting, she demonstrated very well she understands the system. Having worked for 18 years in a place, she knows the system very well. In fact, she even told us she's advising government of Botswana on audit system, which is very good. And to us, she qualifies to audit this office. So, as I second this motion, I beg the members to support the nominee for this office. Thank you very much, Speaker.
I propose the question, which is that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning in its report on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as Auditor General, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, July 15, 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 229, Clause 1 of the Constitution, Section 11, Subsection 8 of the Public Audit Act of 2015, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Ms. Nancy Janet Kabui Kathungu as the Auditor General. Honorable Mbadi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I support this motion on the approval of this nominee for the office of the Auditor General, I just want to underscore again, as my colleagues have said, that this is a very important office. And I think as a country, we stand indicted that we could have a system that allows this office to remain vacant for all these months. This is something that we seriously need to fix, because there is no way you can guarantee accountability in the usage of public resources without the Office of the Auditor General having an office holder, not leave alone even substantive. We have not been having even anyone in acting capacity, Mr. Speaker, one who could sign the audit reports. So, Mr. Speaker, we must have a system which will guarantee that before the Auditor General leaves office at the end of his 8th-year term or her 8th-year term, that someone is already designated as Auditor General in waiting, so that immediately that person can even take over 3 or 6 months before the Auditor General leaves office. So as a country, this is something that we all stand indicted, and especially legislators, those of us who make laws. So this is something that we must fix. I'm happy that at least we have made progress so far to this date. And Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are aware that almost all the cases of corruption that have been unearthed in this country have been as a result of the report of the Auditor General. And therefore, we expect Janet, as she occupies this office, if she will be approved this afternoon and subsequently appointed by the President, that she's not going to let Kenyans down. This is going to be the first female occupant of this office, and she has a huge task ahead of her. This office has actually not disappointed this country. Even the predecessor to Ouko, the immediate Auditor General, did a fantastic job, Mr. Speaker, at a difficult time in the history of this country. We all know that during the one-party rule, and even the early times of multi-party politics, it was very difficult to question the executive. But we had an Auditor General, that time the position was Controller and Auditor General, who could hold his ground and bring audit reports that would indict the executive. And I think that is something to admire. And it was carried forward to the first Auditor General under the 2010 Constitution, Edward Ouko, who also exhibited very strong signs of a professional and came up with professionalism to that office. Therefore, Janet Gathungu has her job cut out for her to prove that she's either going to carry forward with the same competence that Kenyans have had in the previous two occupants, at least the ones I can remember, or she's even going to do better. So, Mr. Speaker, I must disclose that Janet, while she was in her final year at the business school, the University of Nairobi, I was also in my first year. She was, I think, in the class of Moses Kuria. And so in terms of academic qualification, I agree and I can support that she has what it takes to occupy the position of the Auditor General, together with other professional qualifications that have been enumerated by the chair of the committee. And she even has master's degree in strategic management and pursuing her PhD. But Mr. Speaker, there are a few things that have to be dealt with. First is the process. And this is something that we cannot shy away from talking about. You cannot use Public Service Commission to recruit the Auditor General. I find it difficult to accept that that is a process that would stand the test of times. Why do I say so? This is a very important office. We must find a better way, a more independent way of recruiting Auditor General of a country. Mr. Speaker, to me, this office is more important than any other independent office that we can talk about in this country. So just using the Public Service Commission, and then they make recommendation to the President, who then nominates and finally appoints with the approval of Parliament, something needs to be done to guarantee that the person we are going to recruit is actually up to the task. But Mr. Speaker, something again very interesting, and this is not just to indict this lady and to make her recruitment, to cast aspersions on her recruitment, but I am concerned, Mr. Speaker, that this lady was among the list of those Kenyans whose appointments were rejected by a panel that was created. Mr. Speaker, then the problem, what that has done to this lady as she comes into office is to put questions and doubts about her competence. Because if you are rejected and then finally later you are appointed, it puts some dents. And that is why I'm saying Janet, unfortunately, she's coming to office with a lot of question marks that she must really work hard to demonstrate that those who overlooked her were wrong, and those who have now found her fit to occupy this position are right. And she must demonstrate to Kenyans that that stone which was rejected became the cornerstone in terms of upholding accountability, transparency, and integrity in the management of public finance and resources in this country. Mr. Speaker, I'm also delighted to hear that this lady was born in Kisumu. But, Mr. Speaker, we must ask ourselves questions. Really, there are questions that are being asked about appointments in this country, and that is something we cannot run away from. The president must address these doubts that Kenyans have. If you read the social media, it is scandalizing the competence of Kenyans who are even very competent when people start perceiving appointments as taking some ethnic pattern. That is something that I think the president needs to deal with. There were, I know, a number of Kenyans who also did interviews. Probably this lady was the best, but it is difficult convincing Kenyans that the best would only be found in certain regions and bearing certain names, Mr. Speaker. That is something that my president must deal with. It is something that cannot be ignored, Mr. Speaker. In fact, that is what is going to guarantee and ensure cohesion in this country. So, Madam Janet is really coming to this office with a lot of issues and question marks that she must address. Finally, Mr. Speaker, and this is again a concern that I have. Mr. Speaker, in that office of the Auditor General had some deputies, 5 of them. And the lady we are approving her appointment today was answerable to these 5 deputies. Now she's going to be the boss. Something needs to be done in terms of addressing such kind of circumstances in public service. How then would my junior, who was answerable to me yesterday, becomes my boss tomorrow? That now I start answerable to that person. I know it is a lot in politics. In fact, Honorable Mbui is whispering here that Duale is now answerable to Kimunya. But this is a totally different kind of circumstance. These are colleagues, we are in politics, and this is politics. And politics, actually, you are almost first, there is first among equals. But I will tell you, Mr. Speaker, if it is not addressed properly, and if we don't have maturity in the office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, it is likely to affect service delivery. You have a point of order? You want to inform me? I accept, Mr. Speaker. If
now, do you want the information from 001?
Let me hear what the Masai have.
Yeah, he should not refer me as a Masai. He should refer me as honorable member of the August House. Honorable Adan Duale is not answerable to Honorable Kimunya. He's answerable to the party leader, who is His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Thank you. I've informed you.
Actually, I was reporting. That is a very good information from my friend who is now, he keeps on reminding me he's a Masai, and he brings me mbuzi. And I thank you for that. He brings me a lot of mbuzi many times. He's the only one who has brought me a gift in this house. But that gift, Mr. Speaker, did not require disclosure, so I have not disclosed the gifts he has been bringing. And Mr. Speaker, I stand informed. Actually, that was a comment from my deputy, Robert Mbui, who thought that Honorable Duale is now answerable to Honorable Kimunya. It's only that Honorable Kimunya is now occupying position that was occupied by Honorable Duale. Mr. Speaker, those are the issues that I actually have. But the issues that I've raised is not in any way to say, I'm not trying to imply that we should reject the nomination of Janet Gathungu. I think we can give this lady opportunity to serve this country, demonstrate her competence, and I have no doubt if she has been in civil service for all these years without her character being tainted in any way, I probably think that she is likely to demonstrate some competence that will impress us even going forward, to be looking inwards in terms of recruiting the next occupant of the office of the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I want to support the motion. Thank you.
Maybe Sergeant at Arms should, I can see several members, particularly lady members, I don't know, most of them are shy getting into the chamber, but they seem to think that there are enough seats. Tell them not to fear. They can come in. When you can see them, they come and stand there and see, they think the house is full. There are still a number of seats where they can come to and participate in the debate. Honorable Kimunya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report of this committee, Committee on Finance and National Planning, on not just the vetting and the approval of one Janet Gathungu as the Auditor General. And Mr. Speaker, let me also start by thanking them for executing this within a very short period, in difficult circumstances, for going their recess, where the rest of us were busy out there meeting our constituents, but they came back to ensure that we have an Auditor General after the false starts we had last year. So Speaker, I cannot belabor by the point in terms of the importance of having an Auditor General, or even having an auditor for any organizations. For the corporate, the incorporation, the organization, Kenya Incorporated, and basically as a nation, with all the parastatals, with all the investments, we rely on this one person to give us assurance in terms of whether our money has been expended for the benefit of the Kenyan people, whether value for money has been achieved. As a house, we appropriate the money. And we assume that the executive, the judiciary, the National Assembly, and all the bodies and the commissions will utilize the money for the benefit of the Kenyan people, not just spending, but to achieve some desired outcomes. And it's only the office of the Auditor General that can give us that assurance. It matters not what even we as a house do. I know the departmental committees are very thorough in terms of the oversight, and we occasionally even summon officers to come and, every time there's a report in the media that some money has disappeared or some things have happened. But ultimately, the only person who has the ultimate responsibility to tell us whether the money has been spent properly, whether value for money has been achieved, is the Auditor General. And hence, it's a very important office, and I really join everyone else who had concerns in terms of the delay that we had as part of the recruitment process that went and hit some stumbling blocks along the way. I don't need to re-emphasize what the chair has said in terms of the timelines for the submission of reports. We know all the accounting officers have to render their reports, and they come submitted to audit and eventually find themselves in this house. Mr. Speaker, I know the chair has highlighted that the nominee has done 18 years of experience. When I look at her CV, I've counted, she started working in 1993. We are now in 2020. So that gives us 27 years of experience. And or in audit. Fortunately, I trained as an auditor myself from my early days. And I actually know what it means for somebody to stick in audit for that long. It's like wine. You know, the longer you're there, the better you get. You know, you mature. You've seen it all in terms of all the variations of what people can do, what cannot do. From the old days when manual records were the in thing to now when we have technology basically taking over. So I'm very happy that, first of all, we have somebody who has gone through the system from working in the ministries, working in the Auditor General corporations, looking at the various corporations, working in a corporation in Kenyatta Hospital, and then joining the audit office to consolidate all that experience. Mr. Speaker, I also noticed, and I'm very happy, that the nominee represents now a group of Kenyans who have served with loyalty and dedication. Over 27 years serving the public, and has now risen to a point where she's now picked up among colleagues and told, you will be the head. Because we have progressively witnessed career civil servants who do all the time, work for like 25 years in an organization, and all of a sudden, somebody is picked up from the private sector and is brought in and told you're the new boss. And it demotivates the people who've been working. There's no career progression because people are waiting that as the higher I rise, soon somebody else will be picked from outside and will come in. And hence, I'm very happy that at least her appointment or her nomination will bring a sense of fresh inspiration to those in the service who can now see that if they stay long in the organization, working for government, dedicating themselves, their day will come one day. Mr. Speaker, the issue of succession management is critical, especially in these offices. And I do hope that the nominee, Janet Gathungu, will take it upon herself to start creating her succession management. It's a one term of 8 years. And during this time, perhaps even in the 5th year, we should be seeing some certainty in terms of this is a possible panel of future Auditor Generals to pick from. So that by the time we come to the year 2027, we will not be going through having to go looking outside from Iceland, from everywhere else. We should be able to be looking from inside. Let all the people who want to be Auditor General in future start joining the organization today and not wait out there to be picked from outside, because that's part of the thing that we would want to see, at least some succession management that is that we can associate with. So, I know the issue has been raised about whether deputies might feel that perhaps their junior has risen up. I don't want to talk on behalf of them or not. I don't even know how many of them applied for the position, because obviously you will not win a lottery if you never bought a ticket. At least Janet was daring enough to apply, and perhaps it's on the selection committee that can tell us what happened. But the good thing is that she actually made the cut in the first instance and in the second instance, and I'm glad that the women of Kenya can now be happy that they not only have a controller of budget, but they also have now the Auditor General, so that we keep being reminded that our assets are safer in the hands of our ladies. So we hope that we can see that happening, especially as we now move into the critical phase in the next 2 years, not just as we unite the country from a political perspective, but as we embark with more gusto on the war on graft. And this office will be critical so that we shall have set the cornerstones and all the building blocks for a determined fight on graft with the systems at the Auditor General, with evidence brought to the House and to the multi-agency teams that are looking at these things so that what the Auditor General has should feed into the other system so that at least we can safeguard our money and ensure that much as things may have been stolen in the past, as we look for the horses that bolted in the past, to ensure that our stables are so tight that no more horses shall bolt into the future. Mr. Speaker, I could go on and on, but I want to, having been a chairman of ISPAC, I obviously was also very concerned to see that we're actually talking of a member who is current. And I've actually confirmed independently that Janet has a practicing certificate number 2139. Yeah? No, Janet, Nancy Gadungu. I don't know why I'm talking of Janet. Huh? Yes, Nancy Janet, yes. Nancy Gadungu has a practicing certificate number 2139, and it's actually current. She's actually renewed her practicing certificate, and she's been a member, obviously, from 2007. So she did not join the institute just to apply for this position, which is what we've seen people coming from outside. They never bother with the institute until a position is advertised. Then they join the institute just for purpose of vetting. So it's somebody who just not been in the system, but has been supportive and has done a lot of work for accounting, especially within the public sector. So really, we don't need to belabor the point. I want to also undertake to work with the executive on a review of the Public Audit Act of 2015, because we saw these transitional challenges and a few other things have been picked up, and I do hope to bring to this House some amendments to it so that between now and the next time we need to review these appointments, at least the law will have been more clearer. And even some of the other challenges that we find to make sure that the audits are better and more informative and can help achieving the objective of value for money. I don't want to exhaust all the time I have, because I would like to have more members giving their views, and hence allow me, Mr. Speaker, to end there and urge the House that we support this appointment of Nancy Gadungu, not just because she's a woman, not just because of where she comes from, not because of her name, but because of her experience and the expectations that we have that she will deliver for the Kenyan people. And we wish her well in her challenging task of obviously ensuring that the backlog is cleared and that we can get back to where Edward Ouko took us. Another fine gentleman who I met and a friend of mine, and I know he'll be happy to see he has a successor who he's also mentored to during the 8 years he has been in office. Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I beg to support.
Can I hear the chairman of the Public Investments Committee, one of the committees that heavily consume the work of the Auditor General, the Honorable Abdul Samad? He appeared to be limping. sit on account of sitting for too many hours. We haven't sat for many hours. Or is it you have acquired a new style of walking? You know, chairman may become very, maybe this is the walking style of the chairman of a public accounts committee, public investments. I'm yet to see the Honorable Opio Wandai, who is also the other heavy consumer of that one, and the Honorable Kaduri Murungi. I need to hear these people because they are the ones who have been suffering since August last year.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to welcome this particular nomination. And the reason why the country needs to welcome is, needless to say, the challenges that we have all been facing as a country. Mr. Speaker, in November last year, on a Wednesday, and on that day I was not limping as I was today, but on a Wednesday, 20th November, we were able to table a report, Mr. Speaker. And that report was for purposes of the Central Bank of Kenya, being a request that they wished for their financials to be extended, not for any other reasons, but to be extended because of the absence of an Auditor General. And Mr. Speaker, amongst the things that we also were able to approve were an extension of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Capital Markets Authority, the Central Bank, Kenya Power and Lightning, KenGen, and the East Africa Portland Cement, who the laws of this country are that by 30th of September, they have to have had their reports already audited. And in that particular report, Mr. Speaker, that we were able to table, and it was approved by this very House. And I want to remind honorable members, not for any other reason, but for purposes of continuity. What was agreed in that report was that the Committee on Finance was to be able to introduce amendments into the Act governing the Office of the Auditor General, the Public Audit Act, where the issue of succession shall not be an element of contention anymore. And I want to urge every Kenyan, because we are concerned about Kenyans deciding to go to court, as much as we do respect that it is their constitutional right. We do respect that they have every single obligation to try and honor the Constitution of this country. But equally, we do request them that the country does need to move forward in the rightful manner, and we cannot be able to move forward. Counties will be starved of cash. State corporations will end up misbehaving, Mr. Speaker, and many other mischievous deeds will end up happening if at all we do not have a substantive Auditor General in place. Probably, Mr. Speaker, I was able to read this particular report, and there's a comment that when she was asked what she's going to do about the issue of corruption, and Mr. Speaker, I do not know whether the members of the Finance Committee did not ask her this, but one of the things that she said was that she will be introducing e-procurement. I'm hoping that what that meant was she'll be introducing e-procurement inside the office of the Auditor General. Because if it's to introduce e-procurement into every other public entity, that means it is not under her mandate, but under the mandate of this very House to be able to amend the Public Procurement Act to ensure that entities are going to be purchasing and procuring using the e-method. And continuing, Mr. Speaker, as my leader, Honorable Badi, had said, that she enters into a system where those who she was calling her bosses are today her juniors. But I believe, with her record CV, she has worked in other state entities as well. With her record CV, I believe she will be able to hold utmost professionalism in ensuring that she discharges her duties as she has taken oath to be able to do. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that she has put in her comments in this particular report, one of the things that she has been quoted as saying is that she will be able to release these reports in a timely fashion for purposes of ensuring that the Constitution is not violated, for purposes of ensuring the acts of these countries are not violated. And lastly, as the Public Investment Committee, we have a number of special audits that we've been able to request, and we are hoping, and we are of the belief that because she has been in the system, she will be able to ensure that those particular reports are going to be out and ready in no time. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Dwele.
Honorable Speaker, as I rise to support the report of the Committee on Finance on the vetting of the nominee for the appointment to the office of the Auditor General in terms of Article 229 of the Constitution, allow me on the onset to congratulate the former Auditor General, Mr. Edward Ouko, for having served this nation for the past 8 years as Auditor General, in my opinion, extremely well in a very difficult circumstance. Mr. Speaker, the job of the Auditor General, and he was the first Auditor General under the new Constitution, is not an easy one. And looking at the functions of that office in line with Article 229 of the Constitution, it's a job that can be summed up being simply to audit the national executive, the county executive and the assembly, constitutional office holders or commissions, the judiciary and parliament, and to make sure that each and every money appropriated by parliament is accounted for and there is value for that money. The Speaker, on a very light note, someone once, Mr. Speaker, told me that if you are keen to notice the former Auditor General, Mr. Edward Ouko, usually used to keep his hair completely shaved. But it was not by choice. I'm told within few months of him being in that office and taking over that office, his hair was falling very fast. And before I came this afternoon, I had to talk to, and the reason was because of the magnitude of the constitutional weight of that office. But before I came to this afternoon to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, I talked to a friend of his, and I'm told since he left office, his hair is growing back. So is mine as the former leader of majority. So sometimes you see your hair is falling very fast. Sometimes you see your hair turns gray very fast. Not because of something else, but because of the office. So I'm sure, I'm told, Honorable, the former Auditor General. And the Speaker, there are certain offices in this country independent offices, the office of the DPP, the office of the Auditor General, the office of team and men and women who work at the EACC, the Inspector General of Police. Those are offices that in one way or the other, they will make decisions that will not make everybody very happy. And they say, Mr. Speaker, that if you want to please everybody, then the best job for you is to sell ice cream. So, Janet, you are lucky because we will not see how your hair will fall. Maybe you'll cover with a scarf. Honorable Janet Ogere, my very old friend, she served me very well when I was in ODM as our executive director. She's telling me I'm growing young. Yes, because now I have time for my family and my children, and I sleep well. So Honorable Kimunya has made my life a bit easy, and I always pray for him. So, Mr. Speaker, Edward Ouko, and let's be very frank, Edward Ouko was a very good auditor. But Edward Ouko went through hell. He was even dragged to this parliament through a petition. But I'm sure when history will be written down, many of us even had issues with him. You remember the Eurobond. Edward Ouko was a man who had many issues, particularly with the Jubilee administration in which I am part of. But because of the nature of the office, just like that of the DPP and other independent offices, Edward Ouko or the Auditor General has to make one decision either way, and it will not impress everybody. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to thank him. And on moving today, after a long wait, we finally now have a new Auditor General. And I had a chance to look at the report of the Committee of Finance, and I must say that Madam Nancy is cut out for her job. Having worked at the office of the Auditor General in various positions, she doesn't only hold extensive knowledge of audit, but once appointed, she will require each and every person who works at the office of the Auditor General. And it is very, very true. There are 5 of her colleagues senior than her, senior deputy auditor generals who applied for the same job, but because of the Almighty God, she won that seat. So it's her responsibility now as a leader of the audit office. I can't hear what Honorable Junet is saying, the Speaker. Yeah, you know, Honorable Junet, the Almighty speaks to those who are in the panelist. Those of us who believe in God, he doesn't need to speak to, he speaks to those who are conducting the interview. He speaks to their heart. So they make you number one. But now, she must work with her former colleagues, her seniors, and she must have a teamwork. Because that office is very, very key. The Speaker, it's very important for this nation, and as members may be aware that there are so many audit reports that have been pending for being unsigned. You know, legally, just like the DPP and the Auditor General, it is it's a constitutional obligation that it's only them to sign. So if the office of the DPP becomes vacant, if the office of the Auditor General becomes vacant, then we have to wait. So we must amend the Audit Act, we must amend the Constitution, if that has to be, to make sure that we create a transitional mechanism that 6 months, 8 months to the exit of the Auditor General, because they have a tenure of office, that the recruitment process starts. Because Parliament cannot wait. It's very, very clear, Mr. Speaker, in the Constitution that within 6 months after the end of each financial year, the Auditor General shall audit and report in respect of the previous financial year. Even there's a timeline on how he's going to report to Parliament, to the National Assembly, for the national government, the judiciary, and Parliament, and other institutions, and for the Senate in terms of the county. Janet is not getting this job because she's a woman. You know, there's a problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, that even when a woman, state or public officer is involved in corruption, the gender card is raised. But when they're getting jobs, we are appointing them, why is it that the gender card is not raised? Women steal the way men can steal. So when we are appointing Janet, we are not giving Janet because she's a woman. We expect Janet to comply with the provisions of the Constitution and become the best Auditor General after 8 years. And we expect that to profile the gender issue, that women can do better. But Mr. Speaker, we will not expect Janet to go and cover up for her colleagues in the other gender if they're involved. The Vice Chair was saying she's born in Kisumu. Unless you tell us whether he was sending a message. We know where Janet comes from. It's not in doubt. I was also born somewhere outside Northeastern. Honorable Junet was born in Mandera, but he's a member of parliament for Migori. So, but we wish Janet very well, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, the Public Accounts Committee and the Public Investment will now work efficiently to make sure that the pending issues are resolved. I beg to support.
Member for Suna East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this motion, Mr. Speaker. And the onset, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. Mr. Speaker, this office of the Auditor General is one of the most important offices in the structure of governance of our country, Mr. Speaker. And we have taken quite some time from the time the previous auditor retired and up to now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a reason why under the Constitution of 2010, Kenyans decided to make this office a constitutional office, an independent constitutional office, Mr. Speaker. As you remember very well, previously, it used to be called Controller and Auditor Office. But now, under the new Constitution, the two offices were separated. We had the Auditor General's office, and we have the Controller of Budgets office, which were both made constitutional offices, Mr. Speaker. That tells you how important this office is, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I have been raising and saying that if you want to fight corruption in this country, Mr. Speaker, you just need to look at the report of the Auditor General presented to Parliament, Mr. Speaker. As much as it has to go through a process in the Public Accounts Committee, but after it is processed through the Public Accounts Committee, that final report of the Public Accounts Committee, Mr. Speaker, gives the final verdict on the report of the Auditor General. And if that report of Public Accounts Committee was to be implemented successfully, Mr. Speaker, this country will have saved a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General that we had the last 8 years, Mr. Speaker, performed very well. He did a good job, he did a fantastic job. He stepped on many toes, Mr. Speaker, and people didn't feel good about what he was doing. But in the end, Mr. Speaker, he left office with his head high up, Mr. Speaker, because he has done his job in accordance with the Constitution and the law, Mr. Speaker. And I hope the new nominee, Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt, will follow suit and she will do a good job, because from the report of the committee, I am convinced that she is capable of doing a good job. She has the capacity and she has all the required qualifications for her to do a good job, Mr. Speaker, in that office. Mr. Speaker, what worries me a lot is these new constitutional offices that have been created by the Constitution, which we cannot say anymore the new Constitution because it is old. That's why we want even now to do amendments, because it has become old for 10 years. Mr. Speaker, when somebody is appointed to that office and he serves for 8 years, which is non-renewable, Mr. Speaker, where does that person go to? For example, today, you are appointed an Auditor General who is 45 years old, and you tell him to serve for 8 years, non-renewable. After that, where does he go? And somebody is supposed to retire at 60 years old. So, Mr. Speaker, it's very painful, because even under the retirement and benefits, there is no act that guarantees the Auditor General any benefits when he retires, Mr. Speaker. The old Auditor General who has retired has no benefits. He has no pension. He has nothing. I have met him severally, complaining to me. I have served the nation for 8 good years. I have done a good job. I have saved this country billions of shillings through my audit job. Mr. Speaker, after he has retired, he has no benefits at all. He has no pension. He has not been covered under any law on how he's going to retire. Now, if you are 45 years, as I said earlier, and you become an Auditor General, after 8 years you retire, you leave office. It's not renewable. What are you supposed to do, Mr. Speaker? To hang around here drinking in bars? Mr. Speaker, that matter must be addressed. I think it's an oversight that people didn't look at the beginning when the new constitution took effect, Mr. Speaker. Every officer who has served this country, especially at the level of Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, who has stepped on many toes, Mr. Speaker, who has unearthed many scandals, who has saved this country a lot of money, must get a suitable retirement package, Mr. Speaker, at the end of his term. That is my plea, and this House must raise to that occasion, Mr. Speaker. Because even this lady now who has been given this job, after 8 years she's going to retire like the other one. Another one will come, another one will come. So are we going to have an auditor do for us a good job, save us a lot of money, then we just send him home with nothing, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I have served in the Public Accounts Committee now for some time. Mr. Speaker, the audit, when the Auditor General's office was made a constitutional office, was given independence, Mr. Speaker, I can tell without the fear of contradiction that that office has done a fantastic job, Mr. Speaker. You may not agree with what he's saying, you may not agree with what he reports, but Mr. Speaker, it was of my view that there is no need, even sometimes when we are passing the budget here, or the appropriation, I feel sometimes that any ministry or any PS who has audit queries must not be given more money until he clarifies how that audit query happened, or is resolved, Mr. Speaker. Because you cannot keep on carrying audit queries from one year to another year and you keep on being given more money, Mr. Speaker. Ministries which have audit queries, for example, you'll find a ministry has been given a budget of 50 billion, and you'll see them having a query on amount of 15 billion from their budget. And in this financial year, they appear in the budget receiving more money. That is bad accountability. The Auditor General that we have now, Mr. Speaker, looks at how you have applied the law on the use of the money, public funds. He looks at whether the law was followed. He also looks at whether there was value for money. If you look at the Auditor General's report before the Public Accounts Committee, some of the issues he raises is value for money, Mr. Speaker, which we never used to have. The Auditor General nowadays tells Parliament that this work was done, but there was no value for value for money for the public, Mr. Speaker. And PSS appear before the Public Accounts Committee to answer that query, Mr. Speaker. Value for money. So, Mr. Speaker, it is my humble opinion that we must strengthen this office as Parliament, because the Auditor General reports to Parliament. He does not report to any executive office. He directly reports to Parliament, he tables his report to Parliament, and even the auditors that audit the Auditor General's office are appointed by Parliament. That's how independent he is. He's accountable to the people who are elected by the people of the Republic of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to say that I want to congratulate Janet for getting this job. I want to tell her that she's getting into an important office. Kenyans are looking up to her, Mr. Speaker. She must make sure that Kenyans get value for their money, because the amount of money, someone was saying that we have a budget of 3 trillion. And he's saying every year we lose a third. I don't know how that happens, but if that is true, she's the right person who can confirm whether that is true or not true, Mr. Speaker, because she's the Auditor General of the budget of 3 trillion every year, Mr. Speaker. Those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Member for Suba North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also want to join the honorable members in supporting the nomination of Madam Nancy to this position. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that it's going to be a tough call for her fitting in the shoes of Edward Ouko, who's done a very good job. But going by her CV, Mr. Speaker, I am very, very sure that she will do very well. I want to just say, Mr. Speaker, because a lot of accolades has been said her way, that there are certain pertinent issues that Honorable Mbadi has raised, which especially on equitable representation in the committees, and I think there was one of the things that we agreed in this parliament, that so that we abide by the National Cohesion and Integration Act, that we need to look at the constitutional commissions in totality before we make a decision as to the issue of their skewed appointment or not. But I think this is a conversation that as a country we need to be talking about, because there's a little bit of disquiet about the issue of representation and on key jobs. We need to have the face of Kenya. But I didn't want to say it in relation to this, because most times people like using women as the low-hanging fruits. There have been very many men who have been appointed in different positions. I am waiting for the next skewed appointment that has to do with the men, and I will come out very strongly. But because this is a woman, I know Honorable Duale has told us when he was supporting this that we should not only look at a situation, the gender dynamics when it favors us, Mr. Speaker. But I think it's because it's only the wearer of the shoes who knows where it pinches. I am in a group of women, I think it's an online group called African Leading Ladies or something like that. And Mr. Speaker, if you actually see the CVs of the women in that group, there are women from charcoal sellers to professors. They are experts in their own respective fields. But when you actually look at the way appointments are made, it does not represent the number of women and the skills that you are seeing in that group. And this is just a very small internet group. So I'm just wondering how many more women are out there with these amazing skills that we are not recognizing. And that is why whenever we see a situation where a woman has been recognized like Nancy has, then those of us who are pushing the gender agenda are very happy. Because, Mr. Speaker, a lot of times we are being told that the Constitution now provides an equal framework. It provides an equal legal framework, but in practice, a lot of people have not internalized that we need to follow the spirit and the letter of the Constitution in appointments, especially in other appointed or appointive positions. I know when the president was doing the cabinet appointments, especially the first time, he did very well. And when he was doing the PSS, he did fairly well, not as well as he should, because we were hoping to reach the 1/3 rule. But we have not. So increasingly, when you are seeing more women occupying positions like this, and I want to really congratulate Nancy, because she's the first woman to occupy this position. And Mr. Speaker, I know because she's the first one, again, the burden that will be placed before her will be much higher. The expectation will be much higher. So I just want to encourage her that, noting that people will be looking at you from a gendered lens. We know Edward Ouko did very well, but people will not only look at you because Edward did well. They will try and see whether a woman performed equally as well as a man. So I want to encourage you to follow the Leadership and Integrity Act and make sure that you do not fear, but you do your work well. I am only hoping that as Parliament, that we do, and I'm encouraging the Leader of Majority, the way he has said that he's going to bring amendments to the relevant bill so that the transition is easier in future, so that we don't have a situation in future where we have to wait this long. But I would also want to encourage that as Parliament, we put a little bit more budgetary allocation so that the office is not overwhelmed. Sometimes when the Office of the Auditor General comes to audit in our constituencies, you can see that they're actually overwhelmed. I'll give an example that one time our constituencies, and we know that MPs now don't actually have the mandate to do roads. But because of the challenges we face, sometimes we are forced to do access roads to schools or to security installations. And Mr. Speaker, we actually did one such road. And after we did it, the Office of the Auditor General came and spoke to the chief, who had no clue who has done the road. And the chief said, I think it is the county. What did the Office of the Auditor General do without even verifying? Indicate that the CDF has withdrawn money to do a road which was done by the county. Yet, Mr. Speaker, I think it's an open secret who is likely to have done that road. If you just ask at random anybody, who is likely, if you go and say this road was done, who is likely to have done it, whether it's CDF or the county. I mean, these are the things which in law we call res ipsa loquitur. Not by design, but by the nature of the fact that our counties are still, struggling with the systems and things like that. And because of that, sometimes, even very well-meaning governors are duped because the systems and structures that you have in CDF are still not available for the county governments. Very recently, Mr. Speaker, I chanced upon a situation where our CDF had done a health facility when we were allowed to, but when we transitioned with the new constitution, we actually handed over the facilities to the county. But most of them we handed over when they were complete. And then I am told the county government gave a lot of money, and they were making it as though they are starting afresh. So it would look like CDF has actually contributed 100,000 for a building that we have actually almost completed, and the only thing that needed to be done was probably painting. And, and yet now when the Auditor General comes, depending on who they find, they will be told CDF didn't do it, and then you will make it an audit query for CDF. And I think that is that area of tension the Auditor General's office must see how to deal with, so that we are not relying on one person or two people to make a decision, especially when we know that now we have different layers of project implementation from national government to county governments. And Mr. Speaker, I think in concluding, I just want to say also that I want to thank Mzalendo for acknowledging the work that I've done in this parliament, but I know Mzalendo has acknowledged many people before. Oh, congratulations. My brother was number 2. Mr. Speaker, I think some people were asking, I know there was somebody who did an analysis that member questioned because it was more subjective. But when Mzalendo goes into the Hansard to find out whether you contribute or not, it cannot be subjective. Anybody in doubt can also go to the Hansard and confirm. But that is not my concern or my worry. There are members who may speak twice or 3 times, but they speak a lot of substance. My concern, Mr. Speaker, is the number of people who are educated, some members of the public who are educated, who are very ignorant about the operations of Parliament. That you find somebody asking you why you speak in Parliament. They expect her to come and dance in Parliament. We are elected to come into Parliament to speak and represent our people and represent the concerns of our people. Like now I'm representing the women of this country when I'm speaking strongly to the issue of appointment of Nancy and urging the government to appoint more women. You expect me to speak that in your house or where? That is why I was elected number 1, legislation. And I am very proud that I'm doing my work, and I'm doing it excellent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Ainabkoi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I want to congratulate Nancy, Janet, Kabue, Kathuku. On the onset, Mr. Speaker, I've been telling you, and I want to repeat, that you are a gentle giant. You are one of the extraordinary speakers Kenya have seen. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a professional. She has extensive experience in audit. Actually, our leader, Honorable Hamos Kimunya, mentioned that she has 27 years serving in audit. And again, I want to tell this Honorable House that as much as Nancy comes from Central Province, she happens to be my relative. She is married. Her sister is married to my cousin. So Kenya is a great country. We are all intermarried. So having said that, I want to say today that Nancy, she is one of the persons who has had experience, and having said that, she has passed all the requirements according to Article 229 and 118, public participation. Public Committee of Finance and Planning, Honorable the Vice Chair, when he was tabling, he said that she passed all the examination. So, Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt in my mind that we want value for our money. Accountability is the basis of any meaningful achievement. Actually, it is 1 year that our country has not been, the books of account has not been examined. Honorable Leader, can you work with speed, because you've told this Honorable House that you've taken undertaking that you are going to negotiate with the executive to bring amendments in this House so that come 2027, there will be transition. Madam Grace, you are given #1 in Mzalendo. I was given again a present for contributing the motion of planting of trees is compulsory in all learning institutions and individual households. Because I had to mention that because, Honorable Speaker, I always speak, and I always, today, Honorable Leader, people are questioning that why is Chief Kut given I'm only serving in one committee. Then I was given one, and I was a DO, I was a DC. So what's wrong? Loyalty pays and humility pays. If you are loyal, you must be rewarded. So what's the problem? I'm competent. Yes, and I'm consistent in my performing my legislation, representation, and so what's the problem? Sophie, Honorable Leader, I have no doubt in my mind, Leader, that this Nancy, she's competent, she's capable, she will deliver, so let's approve with speed. There's no problem. After all, she's a lady, and she's balancing gender parity in this republic. So the issue of saying gender and so on and so forth, after this Nancy, she's open to constructive suggestions in this republic. She's a very objective person. So we have no doubt in our mind that she's one of the best extraordinary genius women in this republic. So I want to thank His Excellency the President for appointing a very able, suitable candidate. With those few remarks, I submit to support Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Very good, Honorable Member for Enapco. We shall now have the Honorable Makali Mulu, Member for Kitui Central.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And I want to start by really congratulating the committee for this job well done. I think a very short time, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I will listen to the chair of the committee presenting the experience and the academic qualifications of this particular nominee. And I must say, Honorable Speaker, looking at the academic qualifications, the nominee has what it takes to serve in this office. Looking at the experience, Honorable Speaker, she has been an auditor for many years. And to me, what is very encouraging is the fact that she's been promoted from within, Honorable Speaker. So we are saying she's an insider in terms of audit issues. And despite the fact that, Mr. Speaker, that she has been a bit junior compared to the other level, there's a higher level from where she was, Honorable Speaker. I think she meets what we would call minimum requirements for this position. So, Honorable Speaker, I think we must really say congratulations to the nominee and wish her well after getting appointed to this important position. But, Honorable Speaker, having said that, I think we must make these observations because they are important, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I think it's last year, towards the end of last year, the chair PIC raised the matter of the absence of a substantive Auditor General because a number of reports had to be deferred in terms of confirming. And why was this happening, Honorable Speaker? This was happening because by law, once an Auditor General leaves office, there is nobody else who can sign reports, even the ones who are acting. So it means all the reports must wait till we have a substantive Auditor General, Honorable Speaker. And I think this is a matter, as a House, we will need to discuss and see how we can really help that area. Because, Honorable Speaker, a situation where we have to wait till we get a substantive Auditor General, Honorable Speaker, we may end up delaying a lot of things. And when we talk about corruption in this country, we all know where we are, Honorable Speaker. So I think this office should not at any point have no substantive person in place, Honorable Speaker. So the delay, Honorable Speaker, to me, this is something we should avoid in the future. And I really want to support those who are saying we need to come up with a legal framework to make sure that, Honorable Speaker, about 6 months to the end of the term of the sitting Auditor General, we'll have appointed another Auditor General who will just be waiting for the right time to come and then assume the office. In that case, we'll be helping this country, Honorable Speaker. The other issue I want to observe, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of recruitment process, as it was said. In a situation where, Honorable Speaker, you go through interview number 1, and people say you are not qualified, and then another interview 2, people say you are qualified. What that does, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't question the qualification of the particular candidate. It questions those who are carrying out the process. And that's why I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is important that this important office, when it comes to interviews, they must be done by people who are seen to be very neutral in terms of making conclusions. We are saying, Honorable Speaker, we know it's a common practice that people would lobby for positions. But even as lobbying is done, Honorable Speaker, it is important that the process is seen to be objective so that we don't have situations where we say today somebody is not qualified and tomorrow you say that person is qualified. To me, that sends the wrong signals. The other issue, Honorable Speaker, is the issue which has been raised earlier, the issue of reporting. That there are 5 people who are already senior. And then she'll be reporting to them. And Mr. Speaker, people who have basic human resource experience, it is your senior who does your price or reports. Those are the people who sign for you. So if I've been signing your price or report, and then tomorrow you start signing mine, you can see where it puts the situation. So we are just saying that even as you promote people, it is important to consider such situations because in a normal circumstance, what would happen is then the best situation would be those who are senior than her would have to leave that organization so that then you get that good working relationship. But anyway, I know she's qualified. So she'll have to get a way of making sure that the working environment really remains friendly to even those who have been senior to her and now will be reporting to her. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, is that as a result of having no substantive Auditor General, there are very many reports which are now not signed and are going to await our signature. And the question is, Honorable Speaker, at times when you're at that level, and you know in Kenya very well, everybody would want really to familiarize yourself with all those reports before you sign. So I'm imagining if she was to sit and look at all these reports before she signs, then there could be another delay in terms of having these reports come to this House. And Honorable Speaker, you know very well that PAC, which is the Parliamentary Accounts Committee, PIC, which is the Parliamentary Investment Committee, and the Special Funds Committees really will not have much work unless these reports are signed and submitted to this House. So we are saying, Honorable Speaker, there must be a balancing act where even as she tries to ensure that she's signing the right documentation, then she doesn't take a lot of time to sign, and then that will lead to unnecessary delay. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, is that even as she assumes office, I think now this office has grown, it has very many staff members. And at times I've heard, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans also complaining about the Auditor General office having also some bad elements in there. So even as we talk about corruption in the other sectors of the country, corruption cannot be ruled out in that particular important office. So the nominee will also have an assignment to make sure that issues of corruption in that particular office are also addressed as issues of corruption have been addressed in other areas. Because they audit everybody, and really it would be very unfair to have reports saying Kenyans are losing a lot of the budget to misdirection or misappropriation or corruption-related matters, and then you find that we are also contributing to that. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say this. The job of this nominee is well cut. That is a must. And the previous occupants of this office, Honorable Speaker, we used to have a Mr. Moy during the Kanu era, who did a good job despite all those difficult times. Then we have Ouko, who has just now, who has exited, who has also done a good job. We expect this nominee also to do a good job. But one thing she must really do is that, as now she awaits nomination, she can pledge her loyalty to anybody. But once the appointment is pronounced, Honorable Speaker, she can only pledge her loyalty to the Constitution of this country. In that case, then, she will do her work objectively, without fear or favor, and in that case, then, Kenyans will get value for money. Why am I saying this, Honorable Speaker? Honorable Speaker, I believe this country has resources which, if properly managed, the so-called prudent management of public resources, we can actually meet most of our development needs, and we can also meet most of our recurrent needs. And the only office which can ensure that prudent management of this public resources is done, Honorable Speaker, is this particular nominee once she assumes office. So I want to wish her well. As Kenyans, it's important we pray for her because she's not going to join this office and then things just be smooth. Things are going to get rough as you move. We are aware corruption fights back, so she must be ready that when corruption starts fighting back, she must be able to stand firm and make sure that she doesn't do reports which are in any way interfered with by anybody. So with those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to support and wish this particular nominee well. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Very well spoken, the Honorable Dr. Makali. We shall now have contribution from the Honorable Kandie, member for Baringo Central. The Honorable Kandie seems not to be in the house. We shall now have contribution from the Honorable Kimani Kuria, member for Molo.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute towards this motion. I sit in the Finance and National Planning Committee that approved this nominee. A lot of things have been said, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of this House, and I'd just like to highlight a few. That this nominee makes us realize that Kenyans are not opposed to women leadership, that Kenyans are not opposed to even youth leadership, but Kenyans want competent people into these respective positions. So when I've heard the contributions on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, it has not been a gender, it has not been based on the gender and say we are proving her because she's a woman. We are proving CPA Janet because she is competent, she's qualified, and she's going to make a great Auditor General. And probably, when we skew this discussion about women in leadership, and not just say that we want more women in power, we want more women in leadership, but we want great people in leadership positions. If they are men, well and good. If they are women, even better. If they are young people, even much better. Then we will have even achieved the constitutional requirement of 2/3 of one gender should not be in any public office, Mr. Speaker. I saw a very consistent Kenyan who rose from the position of an auditor of provincial schools. And I tell you, Mr. Speaker, being an accountant myself, being a CPA myself, to have someone go through those leadership, go through that audit experience, from auditing schools in the villages all the way to now Auditor General, this is a great sense of hope to Kenyans that yes, you do not have to come from a particular family, you don't need to come from a particular big farm to lead in this country. Because you've seen somebody who is not from, when looking at the CV, I didn't even see her having worked with any of the big four accounting firms, because, Mr. Speaker, in the accounting profession, those people that work with the Deloitte and Touche and Young and all those PwC and those great companies are regarded probably as even having posh jobs that other auditors in other departments. But you've seen somebody, despite not having that international experience, who is rising from that low level of audit all the way to the Auditor General as a great source of hope to people.
Honorable Sankok, the Honorable Kimani, just hold on a second. The Honorable Sankok seems to have a point of order.
Honorable Speaker, I think we are leaders and we should lead by example. Wearing of mask is the Ministry of Health guidelines. And if we are in public and not wearing mask, what message are we sending to Kenyans? And I'm speaking from the medical experience. Honorable Speaker, leaders should lead by example by putting on masks. So thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. He's actually out of order.
The Honorable Sankok, who is not wearing a mask? The Honorable Kimani seems to have one. But if he was not wearing one, Honorable members, I think the Honorable Sankok is very well grounded in raising that point of order. This is a matter that is absolutely of supreme importance to all of us, that we should keep on these masks. Because this thing called COVID has got it does not forgive anyone. Let us just try to keep it out of our way as much as possible. The Honorable Kimani, proceed and complete your submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But now that you say that, the discussion about wearing a mask or not, to the best of my knowledge, I thought we were maintaining good social distancing, and therefore there is no risk of me spreading the virus to anyone around here. And Mr. Speaker, now that you said that, even some of us that seem to be wearing it are wearing them as kidevu, quote unquote, and not necessarily as proper as it should be. But I stand guided, Mr. Speaker. There has been a discussion, Mr. Speaker, about when these positions fall vacant, how long do we take before we fill them? Today we are sitting to approve this Auditor General, and whereas this position has stayed without someone filling this position for, I think, almost a year. And Mr. Speaker, we have seen this even in other government offices. To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, the office of the Ombudsman, for example, has the immediate former leader of that institution as the Honorable Otiende Amolo. I am not sure whether that office has had somebody to be nominated to continue that position. So what does this mean, Mr. Speaker? That this House needs to come up with legislation that ensures that these positions are filled when and they fall vacant. I have given this example before, Mr. Speaker. We saw an institution like Safaricom appointing a CEO who will report to office a year after the appointment. Whereas as in government, we are approving people in positions as serious and as senior as that of the Office of the Auditor General 1 year after.
The Honorable Kimani, you seem to be attracting a lot of interest. The Honorable Member for Kikuyu seems to have a point of order. What's out of order, the Honorable Ishuma?
Honorable Speaker, thank you. And I didn't want to interrupt because I also see the immediate former ombudsman is seated here, the Honorable Otiende Amolo. But the member mentioned that there has not been a substantive holder of that office, which this being a house of records, it is only right that we put the record straight, whether or not. Maybe he meant to insinuate that the current holder may not be seen as much as the former office holder is seen, but there is indeed an ombudsman in the name of the former member for Meru, Honorable Kajuju, who is the current ombudsman. So just for record, Honorable Speaker, maybe it's good to put that fact in place, that there is indeed a substantive holder of that office. Maybe it's to encourage the current holder to be as active as the Honorable Otiende Amolo in safeguarding public interest, and to be seen more, to be safeguarding public interest. And maybe that way Kenyans will know there is indeed an office holder.
Kimani, you have made your point, and you are absolutely right. There's a substantive holder of that office, the Honorable Otiende, Dr. Otiende Amolo, being the emeritus holder of that important office. But I am confident that my senior, the Honorable Kajuju, former member for Meru, is also doing a good job, and that when the time comes, when her reports come here, we shall be able to see what it is that she has done. So let us not make an issue about that, because I am sure she's doing her job, and there's no complaint about how she's going about her job. The Honorable Kimani, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the point that I was making, and I feel should not be lost, is the filling of those positions when they fall vacant. Although the Honorable Florence Kajuju is now the current ombudsman, she was only appointed, I think, last year. But the Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo left the office of the ombudsman, I think, in 2016, which means for several years, there was no substantive ombudsman in that office. And that's what we're talking about. We just had, I think last year we approved the National Land Commission commissioners. How long did it take before the lapse of the term of the previous commissioners and when we appointed them? And these are things that you're saying, that as a government, we need to be as competent as the private sector in terms of ensuring that we fill these positions when they fall vacant. Because when we do not do that, then we are disadvantaging our people. We are not doing well for our country and for our economy and for our people. Because these positions are known that between this time and this term will expire and it's not renewable. So it is time for us to renew that position. Mr. Speaker, the new Auditor General, when approved by this House, will come to as a time when the country is very committed towards dealing with matters of corruption. But Mr. Speaker, there has been an issue about almost issues of conflict of interest, or too many agencies doing almost the same thing. Having served in the Public Accounts Committee for the last 2 years, we have had serious issues of where we have asked for documents from a particular state officer, and the discussion has been, and the answer has been that those documents cannot be availed because they were taken by EACC or DCI. So the new Auditor General must find a way of working with the office of the DCI, with working with the office of EACC, with working with the oversight committees of Parliament, so that one does not seem to be hindering the works of the other. Because I must say from experience in Public Accounts Committee, I've seen this as a great hindrance towards ensuring that there is justice, and even this House serves its mandate of oversighting use of public funds, Mr. Speaker. Our audit, most of the time, has been based on how much money has been wasted or has been lost. But I think, in as much as Dr. Ouko, the previous Auditor General, did a good job, in terms of audit of value for money for these government projects, has not been properly done. We have found projects that, yes, there was procurement was followed correctly, that project was done, yes, but in terms of the value for money that was used, then you find that this has really been wanting. And we are hoping that the new Auditor General will not just carry an audit on the prudent use of public funds, but also, and most importantly, that carry out an audit of value, where the value for money was achieved in terms of this project, Mr. Speaker. But with those many remarks, I would like to really congratulate CPA Janet on her appointment, and hoping that this House will approve her, and I'm sure that she's going to make a remarkable difference to leadership and prove that women can be as good and competent leaders like men and young people of this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Kimani, thank you for your good contribution, and you do justice to the youth ticket in this House by that eloquent delivery this afternoon. We shall have contribution from the Honorable Shaban, member for Taveta.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, pia nami kupatiwa fursa hii ili niweze kuongea swala la kuhusu kipengele cha 229 katika katiba yetu ya Kenya na mujibu wa sheria zetu hapa nchini. Mheshimiwa Spika, mkaguzi mkuu wa pesa za umma na utumiaji wa pesa za umma sio nafasi ambayo ni ya utani, ni nafasi ambayo imewekwa pale kwenye katiba yetu ya Kenya ili kuwe na wafanyikazi ambao wanaweza kusimamia ukaguzi wa utumiaji wa hela zetu hapa nchini. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nasimama kuunga mkono kuwa Janet Gathungu ametosha tu kwa elimu, ametosha kwa kazi, manake mtu akiwa amefanya kazi kwa muda wa miaka 27, Mheshimiwa Spika, hawezi kuwa amefikia kiwango kile alichofikia kama hakuwa amefanya kazi nzuri. Bila shaka ataweza kufanya hii kazi bila wasiwasi. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, mara nyingi watu wanafikiria kuwa labda mwanamke akipatiwa kazi ni kwa sababu yeye ni wa jinsia ya kike, na hapatiwi kazi kwa sababu ya vile ambavyo amefuzu kimasomo na kikazi kupatiwa majukumu hayo ambayo atakayopatiwa katika ofisi ile. Janet Gathungu amefuzu katika kila hali, kwa mali, kwa njia zote zile, na isitoshe pia tunasema ni nani kama mama, kwa sababu kina mama wamepatiwa nafasi nzuri sana na Mwenyezi Mungu ya kuweza kuunda jamii na kusimamia jamii. Mheshimiwa Spika, mama huyu Janet Gathungu, kulingana na vile alivyofanya kazi pale kwa muda mrefu, nataka kwanza kutoa shukrani zangu za dhati kwa Mheshimiwa Rais kwa amempatia nafasi ya kuweza kuja kufanya kazi ile. Vile vile sisi kama bunge tutakubaliana na swala hilo, kwa sababu ya ukiangalia vile alivyo, bila shaka ataweza kazi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la muhimu la kutaja ni kuwa, kama vile wenzangu walivyozungumza hapo mbeleni, ni kuwa tusicheleweshe nafasi hizi. Manake njia zile ambazo tunazochukulia kupatiana hizi kazi zinachukua muda mrefu na zinaacha ofisi zile bila mtu kuweza kusimamia, bila wasiwasi kuweza kufanya zile kazi ambazo zinatakana kutenda, haswa kwenye ofisi kama hii ya ukaguzi ya mali, mkaguzi mkuu wa mali ya umma. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi sina mengi ya kusema isipokuwa ni kushukuru tu kuwa kwa mara ya kwanza mwanamke huyu Janet Gathungu anaweza kupatiwa nafasi hii ili aweze kusimamia ukaguzi wa mali zote za umma hapa nchini. Naunga mkono.
Is that the Honorable Naika that I see at the back there? The Honorable Naika. That's not Honorable Naika. Then we shall have the Honorable Martin Owino, member for Ndiwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this as well, and I want to thank Durango and the Finance Committee, and congratulate Janet Nancy Githangu. Mr. Speaker, I want to make a point that every time we fill these positions, the idea of gender comes in. Let us look at integrity and competence of Kenyans. And by the way, globally, most management and positions actually is occupied by women. And they do extremely good. So this idea of gender all the time, I think let us give it a break. Point number 2, as we congratulate also Edward Ouko, who have existed, he did a good job. But during that time, Kenyans lost a lot of money. Not because of his doing, but Mr. Speaker, we have to relook at the Article 229, which spells out the period of auditing for these offices. If you audit an office after a year, to me this is reactionary. Because the law stipulates 6 months after years elapse. That's why as a House, the Speaker, we cannot do much. Because we will be looking how the funds were spent, not how the funds are being spent, so that we can have an intervention when it is going on the wrong way. So we are chasing after the money, not preventing the money from being lost. I think as a House of Legislation, we need to look at that Article 229. Mr. Speaker, on the same strength, the internal audit does not seem to be working for these departments and agencies because they are domiciled in the same departments and counties. And most of the time, they are compromised. So Kenyans usually look for their help in the Auditor General. The other issue which we can also talk about, and I think my minority leader, John Mbadi, talked about it. Mr. Speaker, this is supposed to be an independent office. But I think the independency is chipped off by the nomination and appointment process. In other words, maybe we should think of having this office being run publicly through votes. So the public becomes the appointer of the office. And that gives confidence without, it's true, it may be American, but it works. It works. I can't buy that it can work, Mr. Speaker. We have to do something because where is the effectiveness of this office when people stand and say, we vote 3 trillion and then lose a third of it? It doesn't make sense. So I think we need to think about that. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether the Kisumu thing was intentional, but what I would say in all the appointments we make, let us be fair and practice equity in the distribution of opportunities and positions. Mr. Speaker, this trend is worrying to not only us, but many Kenyans, how the opportunities are distributed. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage that this office be resourced well so that they can do a good job. I think another member alluded to this fact, that they spread too thin And sometimes when they bring report to us, we may not do much better with those reports because some are not accurate, not because of their own marking, but because they spread too thin. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to support and also wish Nancy Janet Githangu all well in that office. Thank you.
The member for Tindred. What is out of order, the Honorable Sankok? Just hold on, the Honorable member for Tindred. The Honorable Sankok, what is your point of order? Let him speak. Don't worry.
Honorable Speaker, I'm standing on a point of order 95. And as to whether auditors mature with age like wine, reading from the mood of the House, I see that we are still repeating the same thing. And I think it is in order for you to put the question. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Is it the mood of the House that we should, the mover should be called to reply? Will as members of that opinion say aye? Will as members of a contrary opinion say nay? The nays have it, we shall proceed. The Honorable Member for Tindred, proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just want to rise to support the motion. And first of all, Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the Committee of Finance and Planning.
The Honorable Lesonet, why you seem agitated today, and this is not usually...
He has just walked in, Honorable Speaker. I don't know why.
Yes, I've seen him walk in. I don't know what it is, which bee has bitten him, but let us hear him.
And they are not keeping social distance with the whip.
Yes, the Honorable Lesonet.
Mr. Speaker, I did my Bachelor of Commerce accounting option in 1992 with Nancy. And it will be unfair, Mr. Speaker, if you terminate
The Honorable Lesonet, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, it will be out of order if the debate on the appointment of Nancy is terminated before I contribute because she's my classmate.
Sit down, the Honorable Lesonet.
She's my classmate, Mr. Speaker.
Sit down. Sit down. You are completely out of order. The Honorable Member for Tindred, proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think Honorable Speaker Lesonet is a ranking member and he doesn't know what's the point of order, what point of information. I think he needs to go through the standing orders. Honorable Speaker, let me just go straight away and say that I want to thank I've seen the report done by the Finance and Planning Committee. I have perused through it and looked at the resume and the CV and the procedures that went through it, especially on Article 229 and the Public Audit Act. Honorable Speaker, I think the committee has done a superb job. Honorable Speaker, the issue of public audit, the Office of the Auditor General, is critical to this country. The success, the financial and fiscal success of a nation hinges on what the Auditor General does. And more so, if the report is actually accepted and what the auditor advises, especially on fiscal audit. I'm saying so because in the last parliament, that's the 11th parliament, as a member of Public Accounts Committee, Honorable Speaker and members, Auditor General does a lot of good work. He actually questions government spending, both in parastatals. He even questions government spending in mainstream government agencies. He even gives advices. But one of the things that I want this House to note is to really give the Auditor General teeth to support that particular office, especially by actually giving good remuneration to the office holders. Honorable Speaker, I have looked at the CV of Nancy Janet. It is quite impressive. She is very knowledgeable, very educated, with a lot of wide experience. Having been in Kenao, having been in the audit sector for quite a long time, spanning over 25 years. This one is going to give us a very good officer if only she is going to be supported. Supported by the executive, supported by the legislature, and supported by the general public, so that we don't view auditors as witch hunters. Honorable Speaker, an auditor in any organization is supposed to give that particular organization a good standing in terms of fiscal and financial way. But if an auditor is looked at as an individual who is out to witch hunt, the last office bearer, Dr. Ouko, did a superb job. He even went to the extent of questioning and talking about how much the government was losing. Now we are talking of a budget of 3 trillion. But if you look at what is actually spent and trickled down to the people, it is not more than 2 trillion. So what is the need that we are going to have a very huge budget, yet we are not going to ensure that it is well utilized? That's why one of the members who was here talked about the prudence in public spending. And I think the success of this office holder, which has a very good CV, which has a very good experience, which has a good knowledge, will be hinged on the support that this House and the executive will give that office. Otherwise, that particular office is going to remain a talk shop. And I want this House to note that even the Public Audit Act is very clear on this. Even in our own offices and even in the constituencies, our success is actually based on looking at the audit reports, appreciating those particular reports, and actually taking the advice of the auditors. But when we don't take that particular advice, then the auditor just lament and lament for 8 years. Two, Honorable Speaker, I just want to point out that this office has been vacant for some duration, some time. I think members have talked about it, and we really need to ensure that in future, we need to put mechanism and legislation in place so that there is no void. Now that the office has almost been vacant for almost 1 year, we have suffered in terms of government audit reports. Even the Division of Revenue Bill hinges on the report of the Auditor General. So that if the audited accounts for the last financial years are not up to date, then what goes to counties will be actually a disservice from this House, not because of our making, but because the office bearer was not in place. So, Honorable Speaker, I would want to urge the members of this House to give the requisite support, the necessary support to the office bearer as it comes in, when we approve it, but also to ensure that her report, the report that shall come from that House, is supported and actually given the necessary teeth that it requires in terms of finances and also in terms of legislative support. I therefore support this appointment. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The member for Mavoko, the Honorable Kingola. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to join my colleagues who are supporting this motion. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I must say, I've served the Committee on Public Accounts Committee. And Mr. Speaker, as I stand here, I want to wish well the former Auditor General, Dr. Edward Ouko. Mr. Speaker, this is a gentleman who took this office at a time when the political landscape of this country was very adverse. Mr. Speaker, it is always known that a new office comes with teething problems. And Mr. Speaker, when Ouko was appointed to this office, he had his challenges. Of course, he was accused of being partisan. He was accused of being opposition. But Mr. Speaker, we have seen the best audited reports emanating during his time. Mr. Speaker, are very powerful. And I must confess that I'm a trained accountant. And Mr. Speaker, for someone to rise to the rank of an Auditor General, it takes a lot. It means a lot. You go through a lot of certifications, Mr. Speaker. And when I see the way that office has been arranged, Mr. Speaker, it is Dr. Ouko who was the main whistleblower in terms of corruption, in terms of impunity, in terms of misuse of public funds. Mr. Speaker, it is through that office that this Parliament, through the various oversight committees, we have been able to spot, to pick out government agencies that are not accounting or being transparent in whatever they are doing. Mr. Speaker, I have seen all the opinions that the Auditor General has been giving out. Mr. Speaker, it is my wish to see this government take to task accounting officers, those are PSs, who year in, year out, financial year in, year out, are getting adverse opinions, disclaimer, qualified. Mr. Speaker, and again, it has become a tradition in this country. We see a PS who has misappropriated, who has not put or kept his books of accounts properly. When a time comes for examination, they have a narrative always, it was the former PS. It was the former PS. I think, Mr. Speaker, we should now, as Parliament, take to task any accounting officer in the government who has been given an opinion, adverse for that matter, must account to the last, or else all the entities that have been tasked to make sure that the account all being held culpable, Mr. Speaker, so that we can stop this narrative every time this PS was not here, I was not here, and it has become a systematic denial. So, Mr. Speaker, I agree with members who say we need to give support to this office, even as Nancy is coming in. I know her, Mr. Speaker, she is a professional, she is qualified, she is in fact, she holds what we call institutional memory. She has been working in that office, and I have no doubt in my mind that she's going to perform the duty of Auditor General diligently, and she's up to the task. Mr. Speaker, unless we support this officer, she will be giving reports year in, year out. But the executive must accept, and Parliament, to give support to the Auditor General, so that all the reports that they are pointing out should be implemented accordingly. And any person pointed to be culpable, Mr. Speaker, to be jailed or even judged or surcharged, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know the importance of audited accounts. I know during that 1 year when, we didn't have an Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, so many sections of the government and even of the economy suffered. Mr. Speaker, you know, banking, the county governments, it cuts across. Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of suffering. And now I'm so glad that with this committee of finance, I've come up with this name, and I can assure you, I am sure, and I know this lady will deliver for Kenya. It is now upon us to give her the support required so that we can clean and cleanse of corruption, theft within our government agencies and the economy at large. I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Lassonet, today you seem to be very intent on breaching all the rules of the House. Social distancing requires that I should be at least a meter away from, and you seem to be of the opinion that just because somebody was your classmate, then that person is as white as pamba. But it's not fair. It's not fair, the Honorable Lassonet. The Honorable Member, the Honorable Chachu. Ganya Chachu. No, I was not giving you, I was just admonishing you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity to support the report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on the vetting of Ms. Nancy Gatungu. The Speaker, sir, from the outset, I commend the committee for a good report. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Office of the Auditor General is critical for the oversight mandate of our Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, 3 critical oversight committees of this House depend and consume the report of the Auditor General for the oversight work as an organ of this House. These are Public Accounts Committee, Public Investment Committee, as well as Special Funds Committee. So, Speaker, sir, an effective office of the Auditor General will enable Parliament to oversight the government effectively. I said government deliberately because not just the executive, it is judiciary, Parliament, as well as even the constitutional offices of this nation. So, Speaker, sir, this oversight is a major mandate of our Parliament. And this office is critical to our functioning and for us to enable to play our constitutional mandate. So, Speaker, sir, it's so unfortunate that for almost a year, this office was almost vacant because there was no substantive Auditor General in that office. And for that period, so, Speaker, sir, I'm not sure we have not lost billions of money, if not more, just because of that laxity or that period when really nobody was watching or playing that critical role of oversighting the government. So, Speaker, sir, I had a chance to be a member of Public Accounts Committee in 10th Parliament and for some times in 11th Parliament. In 10th Parliament, that was during the independent constitution, before the 2010 constitution. So, Speaker, sir, as soon as we established the Office of Auditor General and Mr. Ouko was appointed, and we started getting reports from Mr. Ouko, we could see a world of difference on the quality of the reports that we are getting, and we are able to critically oversight the government because of the support and quality reports and timely reports, which are also very relevant from the Office of the Auditor General. And for these reasons, Mr. Speaker, this is a critical office, and it's critical for the functioning of Parliament, really in oversight mandate. So, Speaker, sir, I really hope that this nominee, who I'm supporting, will be able to surpass the good work of Mr. Ouko in terms of quality and timely reports to enable this country to even have serious oversight and serious accountability in terms of how we manage our national finances. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the nominee because from the report of the vetting committee of the Departmental Committee on Planning, and Finance and National Planning, so, Speaker, sir, can critically see that the critical elements that are required for Parliament to vet public appointees for public offices have been clearly taken care of. So, Speaker, sir, what do we look for? We look for to ensure that the person that's being vetted is suitable in terms of professional experience, in terms of academic qualifications, as well as the issue of integrity. In terms of professional experience, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a woman of letters with a first degree, second master's degree, and now working on a PhD. Not only accounting, but even in statistics management. A critical qualification she needs to perform well in this office. In terms of professional experience, Mr. Speaker, sir, she has worked in public office for over 3 decades, 27 years to be exact. So, Speaker, sir, in terms of integrity, all the public offices, whether it's EACC, DCI, and all others, have given a clean bill of record. With this kind of information before us, so, Speaker, sir, we have a duty to support her, to wish her well, and hope that within that 8 years that she'll be serving this nation as the first female Auditor General, she'll be able to serve us well, and we'll remember her fondly as we remember the founding or the pioneer of that office, Mr. Ouko, for the good work he did for this nation. I support, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Manje, member for Kajiado North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this motion and say I support the appointment of Janet Nancy as the new Auditor General. Also congratulating Robert Ouko for the work well done. I want to tell her that this is a very challenging position that requires somebody who is independent-minded, who will serve Kenyans. Because at the end of the day, our country is not fully developed because of the way we spend our money and the way we audit what we contribute. Actually, the main idea behind Kenyans coming together is to bring the resources together and try to do what people cannot do individually. Hence, these resources, when it is brought together, should be properly audited so that we can achieve development in this particular country. So she should be one of the people who will make sure that the country is developed by making sure that these resources is taken to where it is supposed to go. Also, us as Parliament should make sure that we give enough resources for this office to operate. Because most of the cases, the previous Auditor General was complaining the resources given was not enough. And the resources that is supposed to safeguard is a lot. Therefore, the resources to safeguard this kitty should be equivalent and should be more to make sure that he has auditors in every sector and every part of the country. Mr. Speaker, in the previous times, there is a time I was in Public Accounts Committee, and the Auditor General was telling us there are some counties that are normally not audited properly because of the issue of insecurity and such kind of things. It is my take, if the public resources cannot be audited, then there is no point of giving resources on those areas. It is as simple as that. The Auditor General should be given all the necessary security he requires to go and audit those particular areas. Otherwise, money gets lost in that area, and the areas do not grow because of that lack of that audit. Mr. Speaker, also I tend to think us as Parliament have also a big role to play to make sure that the public fund is properly utilized. Because if you check the kind of reports that we have in Parliament, and they have never been implemented, then it means we have also to come out strongly and say each report of the Auditor General should be implemented to the last point. Because there are so many recommendations and they are never implemented. Therefore, it becomes like just a report like any other. So, Mr. Speaker, I tend to think if we implement half of what the Auditor General in this country has recommended, we can make a very big stride in development in this particular country. Mr. Speaker, I also tend to think we should devolve auditing to the last unit, because if you check the way we are losing resources at the county, then it means we have to do something about it. We cannot just let it go like that. We have to make sure that the resources is well done. And I want to say Nancy is capable because she's an IT expert. She can do audit, the current audit of preventing more pilferage of public fund instead of the traditional audit where you expect to go and audit papers. So she should use the IT knowledge that she has to make sure that she does, as we procure items, then they are audited at the same time. Mr. Speaker, there is a current kind of performance audit which I think she should embrace instead of the traditional one. That one, I think it can really help. And also making sure that the projects and the documentations correspond, because sometimes you might get good books, but when you go to the ground, you don't get the projects. So what is in the field and what is in the paper should correspond. So I think she has a major task that she has to do, but we pray for her. Let her be independent. Let her make sure that there is no collaboration between the procurement officers, auditors, and implementers. And by so doing, she has to come out strongly on the ground and make sure that she breaks the cartels that go to the ground and make sure that the corruption continues. So she has a major role to play. I wish to support her and wish her success in her new role as the Auditor General in this country. I support her.
The Honorable Nguna Ngusia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity given to me to contribute on this motion. Mr. Speaker, let me confess the truth of the matter, that when I saw this appointment, I was really shocked. But at the same time, I never knew who Janet is. Mr. Speaker, let me express the interest that the person I was actually supporting to become Auditor General was Mr. Kamar, because I've interacted with so many staff in that office. However, I am supporting the appointment because what committee has really done is a lot. Based on the education, based on the impeccable credentials the lady has, Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to support her. But one of the key fundamental concern I have in regards to the Auditor General report, Mr. Speaker, you recall last week, it's when they were actually presenting reports for financial year 2018-2019, just last week. We are expecting them to act as per the Article 29 to be presenting their reports in time within 6 months after the financial year lapses. Mr. Speaker, I will be anticipating this by the end of this year, that is in December, before we go to recess. We need to have this audited financial statement for financial year 2019-2020. But I'm sure it is a big ask for the Auditor General offices to adhere the same. Mr. Speaker, I would like also to express the concern our president actually took when he was actually filling up this position. The Auditor General, the outgoing one, it took almost a year getting Janet into place. And Mr. Speaker, when I check the record of one of the best run parastatals and even the private companies I have worked in before, we used to appoint these directors long time ago, 6 months before any office could become vacant. And I'll give an example of Safaricom, which is the most profitable company which in Africa. When the seat fell vacant, actually it was announced who is going to take the responsibility in almost a year to go. And that is why we are failing as a government. As this important office enshrined in our constitution, we are supposed to be getting these appointments actually in time to ensure proper information, and or rather there is no delay in presenting the reports. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to ask the incoming Auditor General in his office to work closely with our committees in the Senate and National Assembly. We look at recently what our Senate did in Kitui County report, and I know it's not only Kitui County itself. We were talking about the financial statements which were actually audited 2 years ago. Mr. Speaker, this we cannot allow it. We need timely report to be presented to us. And if we can actually have the Office of Auditor General working on monthly or even after the semi-annual basis, we will have proper continuation of the information, and information will reach the citizens in time. And much of it has been said. I think academic credentials for Janet quite resonate very well. I'm not supporting her because she was a classmate of Lesonet, who is my good friend. But based on what I have seen and what I've seen in the report, she is capable of delivering to this. Before I conclude, let me say that this is an office that needs somebody who should not in any way support any political party, or rather have what we call political inclination. This is an office that requires independence of highest order. So I'm expecting Janet not to be influenced by any political party or any government that is going to assume the office. And also, this is an office also needs to account to Kenya the three values: the economy, the efficiency, and effectiveness. They have to make sure Kenyans get the three values of their money. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Honorable Ngusia, you're on point. If you have read the report, you will notice that the nominee actually was tasked on whether she has any political leanings or she's associated to any political party, and she responded that she has no such leanings. The Honorable Mzigi Mnene, the member for Taita Taveta.
Asante Bwana Spika, hata mimi kwa kunipatia fursa ili niweze kuchangia kwa swala hili. Na nikianza kabisa, ninasema ya kwamba hata mimi ninaungana na wenzangu kuunga mkono uteuzi huu wa huyu Bi Nancy kwa hii ofisi ambayo ni ofisi muhimu sana katika nchi yetu hii ya Kenya. Na nikiunga mkono, ninafurahi kujua kwamba huyu Bi Nancy ana ufahamu mzuri sana kwa masuala haya ya ukaguzi wa mambo ya fedha na mahesabu. Bwana Spika, nimepata kujua pia Bi Nancy amekuwa akifanya kazi kwa muda mrefu kwa ofisi hii na kwa miaka mingi na kwa vitengo mbalimbali. Na hivyo basi ana uzoefu mzuri wa kazi hii ambao unahitajika kwa yeye kuweza kufanya kazi ambao ameteuliwa kufanya. Na hata pia tukiangalia na tukikagua stakabadhi zake kuangalia mambo ya elimu, basi pia tumepata kujua huyu Bi Nancy elimu yake inamruhusu kufanya kazi hii. Amepitia viwango vya elimu ambao vinahitajika kuweza kufanya kazi hii. Na kwa kifupi basi, kwa sababu mengi tumeshajadili, nitasema ninaunga mkono uteuzi wake na ninamtakia kila laheri katika kazi yake. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
The Honorable Nur Sophia, member for Ijara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this motion. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the committee for a report well done. And from onstart, I want to say I'm supporting the committee's report. And Mr. Chair, and having appreciated the committee's work, and again, I want to appreciate our Constitution of 2010 that has created the Auditors General as an independent body, Mr. Speaker. Being a person who contributed very heavily and who believe she is one among the framers of our Constitution of 20. Growing within the system of audit system, Mr. Speaker, is not a joke. And that is giving her an opportunity to do her work properly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, there are people who, from the same office, who applied for the same position with her. Those ones will ask her as an individual to work with them because she cannot work in isolation. She must bring everybody on board, and everybody will be able to support her so that she can achieve her mandate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, runs a very crucial, and it has a crucial mandate in checking through resource management, resource usage, wastage within the ministries and other parastatal and other organs. And that gives us not only this parliament for an oversight use, but it gives to every Kenyan to look through the Auditor General's report so that they can see their taxpayer, the resources they have paid to this nation, whether it has been used properly or not. And they can ask, and they can use that report for accountability purpose. It is not only for this House, Mr. Speaker, but it gives an opportunity where every Kenyan will be able to look through the report so that they will be able to see whether their resources have been used properly, whether there have been resources that have been wasted, whether there is wastage within ministries. This is the office that can give us that opportunity, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, this office again, Mr. Speaker, when it is looking through its reports, Mr. Speaker, and when it is auditing various organs in the government, and when we are saying government cuts across, including the parliament, the executive, the judiciary, and within those, all the other parastatals that comes below them, Mr. Speaker. The report of the Auditor General will be able to tell us whether the resources that have planned for certain ministries, whether that money has been used, whether there was value for money used within those ministries, within those parastatals, and any other organ that use public money, Mr. Speaker, whether the money have been used properly, whether there is value for that money that has been given. Sometimes there are money that are allocated and resources, and you will see the auditor's report telling you that this certain ministry or certain accounting officer have not used the money properly. And again, as a house, as a budget-making house, we do not use that resources to judge that particular minister or that particular PS why that resources have not been used and why do they need more resources to be allocated to them. Mr. Speaker, I want to leave at that and support the report. Thank you so much for giving me this chance.
Honorable members, there's still a lot of interest in this, but the rules require that this motion be debated for 3 hours. It is now just about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to complete it. I will therefore call on the mover to now reply. And members, I'll plead with you to stay in the House so that we can complete this business as per rules. So, mover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to, in replying, to thank the members for the immense interest they have shown, but I'm sympathetic to the member, Honorable 001. If it is your wish, Mr. Speaker, that I can donate 2 minutes for him to just say a word.
That is all? You would like only the Honorable Sankok? The Honorable Otiende, the Honorable Ongera, and the Honorable Lesonet. 4 minutes. The Honorable Lesonet, you will kick it off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
The Honorable Sankok to start. The Honorable Lesonet will be last. You seem not to be following the proceedings of the House today.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't give myself the mic. I mean, the mic is here, Mr. Speaker.
No, the Honorable Sankok was on his feet, so he will start, followed by the Honorable Dr. Otiende, the Honorable Janet Ongera, then yourself.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And as the earlier speakers had put it, I do support this report 100% because the committee have done a thorough job, Honorable Speaker. And Janet Nancy Kadongo is overqualified, Honorable Speaker. And if really auditors mature with age like wine, she have really matured through the ranks of the auditing profession, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just want to give an advice, Honorable Speaker, that let us see projects that are supposed to be implemented by the national government, sometimes National Constituency Development Fund, county government, assuming that those projects are the ones who have done them and allocating that money, Honorable Speaker. So she should read the Constitution very well and know the devolved function, Honorable Speaker. Otherwise, governors are running away with projects of the national government, Honorable Speaker. Another advice to the appointing authority, Honorable Speaker, let us keep on considering persons with disabilities. I will not tire in mentioning the issue of persons with disability. We have not been given our rightful positions. Women have gotten theirs. It is now for persons with disability to be considered in every appointment, Honorable Speaker, in line with Article 54 of our Constitution.
The Honorable Dr. Otiende.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because I have a short time, I will not say what I wanted to say. Only three quick things. One, Mr. Speaker, we must commend the former Auditor General, Dr. Edward Uko, for doing a good job, a stellar job. It is a shame that after doing such a good job to this country, he is now being put to act like a beggar to beg for his dues, for which he worked for 8 years. That is a shame that needs condemnation. And perhaps the report should find pride of place of that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, it is also a shame that we are now approving an Auditor General with a gap of over 1 year. That gap was based on a misreading of the law. The Independent Officers Appointment Act of 2011, somebody misadvised the executive that the law does not allow you to commence that process until the holder has left. That is wrong. It is not based on the law, on Section 5. And it is important we correct that because it is likely to recur when it comes to the new Chief Justice or any other holder. That argument, if sustained, will mislead us. And the Leader of Majority needs to look into that. Thirdly and lastly is to advise the incoming Auditor General that these offices, they are given to us, independent offices, so that you can have courage, you can have independence, and you can have professionalism. If you lose any of those, then the need for independence of those offices go, and Kenyans will start demanding that they are necessary. Let us hold on to the truth and expectation of the Constitution. With that, I support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Janet Vera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, like my colleagues, I rise to congratulate the chairman of this committee for bringing these nominees' name for us to approve. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm very happy to note that Janet, who shares my name, is competent on this job, Mr. Speaker. And I'm even more happy to note, Mr. Speaker, that she's a woman. And I cannot forget to belabor the point that we are not all the time mourning that we are being given positions. As women, we still appreciate when one of our own is given a high-deserving job like this, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to commend the committee for having seen it appropriate to bring her name. Mr. Speaker, however, just like my brother Otiende said, there is a monster in the house. Mr. Speaker, sir, I feel very sad that when Ouko did such a good job, the outgoing Auditor General, he was the real whistleblower. He's the only one who brought the reports into this parliament. The way he has been treated by the executive is displeasing, Mr. Speaker, sir. That the man is actually literally going to beg for his dues through the media. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, I hope that Janet will do the right job. There are so many reports hanging out there in the Auditor General's office of corruption from the counties, from the national government, but they never see the light of the day. They are never brought to this parliament so that we can deal with them. Mr. Speaker, sir, even that office corruption needs to be wiped out so that we can be sure that the reports that reach us are actually the reports that were from the ground. I thank you for giving me and I support the motion.
Finally, the classmate.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the last opportunity to contribute on Nancy. True, Mr. Speaker, that she is qualified, that not only it is written in her CV, I did see her in class in 1992 when we both completed Bachelor of Commerce Accounting option at the University of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, not any other university, at the University of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the university, Mr. Speaker, there are only 2 points I want to put across. The office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, is an independent office. And there is one confusion which has been in previous occupants of the office, Mr. Speaker, probably including Mr. Oko, that they fail to understand that they report to this house. They work for this house. They work for Parliament, Mr. Speaker. All the reports generated by the Office of the Auditor General are for consumption by this honorable house. And Mr. Speaker, we also want to call upon members of the Public Accounts Committee to rise to the occasion that all reports generated by the Office of the Auditor General should promptly, Mr. Speaker, be processed by this House so that where certain actions need to be taken are taken with time in mind, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other point, Mr. Speaker, and probably to answer on to the question of the fact that the former Auditor General has not been paid, is basically an issue of budget, Mr. Speaker. That this House, Mr. Speaker, without heaping blame on the executive, should put a budget line to pay the benefits of the former Auditor General, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the budget making is the business of this House. And members, Mr. Speaker, who are surprised that the Auditor General has not been paid, should have been very quick to make sure that there is such an allocation in budget, whether at Pensions Department or at the Office of the Auditor General, so that such payments are made. And I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, going forward, probably this year, when we meet as Budget Committee, we should be able to make sure that there is a provision towards the benefits of the former Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, as this House, again, for budget, for the Office of the Auditor General to be effective, we need to allocate them adequate resources, Mr. Speaker. There has been a lot of resources allocated to judiciary. We need to see such commensurate allocation equally to the Office of the Auditor General. And Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I thank you and congratulate Nancy for her appointment. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Waihenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me, in concluding, Mr. Speaker, to particularly thank the NGOs who responded by submitting memoranda. This includes Africa Transparency International, National Taxpayers Association, Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance, and the Kenyans for Justice, and all other persons who presented
The Honorable
memoranda.
Waihenya, remember you have only 1 minute.
Yeah, so
before you
Mr.
read all
Speaker,
those things.
I want to reply by thanking members of Parliament for turning out in large numbers from the LSS to come and approve this nominee. We now await the President's endorsement so that Ms. Janet Nancy Kafoi Gadogo can take up the work of Auditor General of the Republic of Kenya. I beg to reply, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, having certified that we have sufficient numbers in the chamber and out there, I now put the question that, taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning in its report on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as the Auditor General, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, July 15, 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 229, Subarticle 1 of the Constitution, Section 11, Subsection 8 of the Public Audit Act 2015, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Ms. Nancy Janet Kavoi Gathungu as the Auditor General. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, I just wish to remind you that these are hard times, and we should recall that we should try as much as possible when you are in public places to continue setting a good example by wearing our masks and sanitizing our hands and taking care of ourselves. This is a responsibility that we must take with utmost seriousness. And I hope to see you here soon again when we resume the proceedings of this House. Honorable members, the time being 6:10 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 28th July 2020 at 2:30 p.m.
They don't have to sit. They will not come back. They better share the problem with us. Yes, yes. When?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We have created a team.
Okay.
The good, the tindol. Omolo, what you said, and what, who was that?